Mastering the Lightning of Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201. Apparition. It seems that choosing Anduin was indeed the right choice. He is simply the lucky star of the Ministry of Magic. She originally planned to confront these families after the banquet, but now Anduin has dealt with them alone. She saw that those whizzing Jamok members who were a little wavering were nodding to her sincerely at this time, while the other family representatives who are suspected of harboring Death Eaters could not say a word at this time. While Minister Barnold was in a good mood, Moody walked to Anduin happily. "Good boy, I didn't expect that we were just a little late, and you sneakily knocked down 10 people. Moody squeezed out a very scary smile and made a face at Anduin. "This is really like a ghost. It's nothing, it's just that they are too greedy. You can't just put your face next to your hand and you don't pull it out, right?" Anduin pouted. "Well done," Moody sneered. "This slap is not only for you, but also for our Ministry of Magic. These bastards dare not take the Ministry of Magic seriously. They are looking for death. By the way." Anduin tilted his head to look at Moody, a little puzzled. "Why did you come so late? I saw that the reporters were let in advance, but you are still late." "Humph, it's all because of that little Barty Crouch." Moody snorted coldly. "Little Barty Crouch?" Anduin tilted his head to look at the young man next to Director Crouch, and found that the other party had a gloomy face at this time, and his tongue was licking his lips. "Yes, we were ready to come when the time came, but little Barty Crouch ran over and had a quarrel with Director Crouch, which delayed a few of us," Moody said speechlessly. "So that's how it is." Anduin knew that little Barty Crouch was also a Death Eater. It seems that they had planned it today. Let Barty Crouch Jr. hold back Minister Barnold and the others, and then send Avery to provoke me. Hectares, I'll show you what I can do at the trial. While Anduin was thinking about it, Professor Snape, who had been watching the show, came over to join in the fun. "Congratulations, Anduin, you won the duel." "As I expected, it was a complete victory, wasn't it?" Snape's voice was still low, and he spoke word by word. "I have to congratulate you too, Professor. You won the bet." Anduin laughed helplessly. "What are you going to let me do, or what are you going to let me help you with?" "Don't worry, this is not a matter now. I will come to you when I need it. By the way." Snape took out a note from his arms and handed it to Anduin. "As a thank you for helping me win, here is the counter curse you wanted." After handing the note to Anduin, Snape left him expressionlessly, leaving Anduin a little surprised. What happened to Professor Snape today? Why was he so kind to give him a counter curse? Anduin raised his eyebrows in confusion. It seemed that the professor was going to ask me to do something big. This was an advance payment. But since he was here, he should make the best of it. Anduin accepted the professor's gift very sincerely. "Anduin, thank you for letting me watch such a wonderful duel. It even made me find the passion of my youth." Professor Flitwick smiled and walked to Anduin and praised him. "You're too kind." Anduin smiled at Professor Flitwick. "All this is thanks to your guidance." "You're too modest." Flitwick closed his eyes and shook his head, as if recalling something. "I've always known your potential, but I didn't expect you to be so talented in wizard duels. Especially when I saw that you could skillfully use the Finkley technique, I knew you must have practiced very hard, otherwise you wouldn't be so calm. Remember the first time we met, you showed an extraordinary determination and hard work. I think this is the result of your long-term persistence," Flitwick said with relief. "It seems that you're very optimistic about Anduin, Philius." An old and deep voice came, and several people turned around and found that it was Headmaster Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall who were walking towards them. "Ha ha, isn't this an obvious thing?" Flitwick laughed. "Well, almost all the deans of the school are here," and Anduin hurriedly greeted them politely. "Oh my God, Anduin, I didn't expect you to do so many dangerous things, whether it's facing the Death Eaters or actually challenging others. It's incredible. If it were in Hogwarts, I would definitely deduct points from you," Professor McGonagall said with some anger. "It's a good thing for young people to take risks." Dumbledore smiled at McGonagall, and then nodded at Anduin. "You call it adventure. When facing the Death Eaters, the first reaction should not be to run away quickly and wait for the rescue of the Ministry of Magic, but to rush up and fight." McGonagall shook her head. "You're right, Professor McGonagall. Anduin responded, "If it is an ideal situation, it is indeed unwise to directly engage in close combat with enemies that are several times your number." Professor McGonagall heard Anduin say this and nodded in approval. But before Professor McGonagall finished nodding, Anduin continued, "The situation at the time needs to be analyzed independently. It's not that I don't want to escape, but I can't escape. The mobility of the enemy and us is not equal at all. Those Death Eaters can apparate, but I only have 2 legs. As for the Ministry of Magic..." Anduin looked at Moody helplessly. "You also know the reaction speed of the Ministry of Magic. If I hadn't counterattacked quickly at the time, I don't think I would be able to stand here and listen to your teachings now. You don't have to worry about me." Moody snorted angrily. Although the Ministry of Magic detected high-energy magic signals at the time, the guys in the Department of Magical Accidents and Disasters were still asleep. If I hadn't checked, they wouldn't have reacted at all. Anduin's response was right. This. Professor McGonagall frowned when she heard Moody say that. It seems that she took it for granted. "But Professor McGonagall, you also reminded me of one thing." Anduin smiled at Professor McGonagall. "Oh, what is it?" "In view of this unequal mobility, plus I may be a thorn in the eyes of many Death Eaters now." Anduin blinked at Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick. "I would like to apply in advance to learn apparition." Chapter 202 Honoring Apparition. Professor McGonagall was stunned. "Yes, I know it's an elective subject for seniors, but I want to learn it in advance. I know this kind of magic is very dangerous to practice, so I want to learn it under the supervision of a professor." Anduin didn't dare to learn it secretly by himself, so it would be better to take the opportunity to apply openly. "I think it's okay." Flitwick nodded and said, "Anduin is now a combat hero certified by the Ministry of Magic. It would be bad if those Death Eaters set their sights on you. With Anduin's talent, it shouldn't be difficult to master it." "That's true, then I have no objection." Professor McGonagall thought about it and agreed. "Then I'll trouble Phileas to guide Anduin next semester. I think as a combat hero, he still has the privilege of enjoying some special tutoring." Dumbledore laughed. While the few people were chatting, a group of Aurors had already repaired the venue that was bombed into potholes. Minister Badnow also stood on the podium in front of the venue. "Everyone." Minister Badnow cast a loud voice spell on himself, and the huge voice attracted everyone's attention to the front desk. "Today, we're here to award Mr. Anduin Wilson, who bravely confronted the Death Eaters and successfully arrested 5 Death Eaters, to encourage all wizards to be brave when facing criminals. At the same time, this banquet is also to commemorate all the heroes who have sacrificed their lives and shed blood to fight against the mysterious man and the Death Eaters. And the Ministry of Magic will uphold its firm belief all along. We will never compromise with those Death Eaters who have committed countless crimes." Minister Badnow's impassioned speech was deafening, and the Aurors in the audience were excited, and the rest of the wizards and reporters responded with warm applause. "Never compromise. Never compromise." I don't know who started it first. The wizards, Aurors, and even reporters in the audience couldn't help but shout slogans, as if they were the nemesis of evil. Under the influence of this atmosphere, some unsociable Wizengamot councillors and representatives of pure blood families had to follow that crowd in applauding and muttering slogans. Presumably, if Anduin had been the loser in the previous duel, or even if the duel had not taken place, Minister Badnow's speech would not have been so tough. And the reactions of the people present might have been completely different from the current enthusiasm. Thinking of this, many representatives of pure blood families and councillors could not help but look at Anduin with resentment. However, when they saw Anduin looking back at them coldly like a snake, they could not help but retract their gazes. "Damn it, why should we be afraid of a little wizard? Thank you all." Minister Badnow was very satisfied with the reactions of the crowd, and his expression towards Anduin became more and more kind. "Next, please allow me to welcome our brave little hero, Anduin Wilson. He was not afraid when facing 5 brutal Death Eaters, and captured them alive with his own strength. He is a well-deserved role model for us." After hearing Minister Badnow's words, the people in the audience could not help but turn their eyes to Anduin and gave him warm applause. If it was before today, these applause might be hypocritical, but after witnessing Anduin's 1-on-10 duel, these applause were sincere. Anduin nodded to everyone and walked slowly to the podium. Minister Badnow looked at Anduin and nodded with a smile. "Next, on behalf of the Ministry of Magic, I will award Mr. Anduin Wilson the Gold Medal of Bravery and the Medal of Honor for Combat Hero." After that, Minister Badnow took the medal from Barty Crouch and pinned it on Anduin. Mr. Anduin Wilson, I hope you can stick to your original intention in the future and continue to contribute your strength to fight against evil. Minister Badno said seriously. I will, Minister Badno, I'm incompatible with evil. Anduin said seriously. Of course, I will do it in my own way, Anduin thought to himself. Then, at the invitation of Minister Badno, Anduin also gave a high-sounding speech. Anyway, it was just to blow rainbow farts to the Ministry of Magic and Minister Badno. And this half-show celebration banquet ended here, but the effect was better than Minister Badno expected. Anduin, when you came, the Aurors told you that you have to attend a trial later. Dumbledore grabbed a handful of candy from the table and stuffed it into his mouth, while saying to Anduin, well, Vanessa mentioned to me that I need to be a witness. Anduin wiped his greasy mouth and burped with satisfaction. Actually, it's not necessary. Today's trial is quite special. It's a retrial of a Death Eater. I invited you because you were a hero. Dumbledore laughed. Principal, please don't flatter me. Don't you know what this hero title means? I'm just cooperating with Minister Badno's actions. Anduin said embarrassedly. After you defeated 10 adult wizards in public, this is no longer a simple show. Dumbledore grabbed a handful of candy and stuffed it into his pocket. I guess your name is on the front page of major newspapers every day. Aren't you going to celebrate? That's just a false reputation. The real ability can't be revealed by newspapers. If I have that time, I'm willing to read a few more books and do a few more experiments. Anduin shook his head and said. Dumbledore raised his eyebrows after hearing Anduin's words, and then asked meaningfully. So after reading the books and doing the experiments, what are you going to do? Training, tasting food, and doing business. Anduin answered instinctively. Doing business? Dumbledore looked at Anduin in surprise. Yes, I recently got a house in Diagon Alley. Wouldn't it be a waste if I don't use it? Maybe I can count on you to patronize me more in the future. Thinking of this, Anduin became excited again and talked to Dumbledore about several products he was going to mass produce. Ha ha ha. Dumbledore laughed from the bottom of his heart. I will definitely take care of your business in the future, Boss Wilson. The two were chatting happily when Moody came over and said, Stop eating, the trial is about to begin, let's go. Dumbledore and Anduin nodded and followed Moody to the trial room. The trial room of the Ministry of Magic is located on the 10th floor underground and cannot be reached by elevator. You can only go down the stairs. Chapter 203 Trial. After Anduin and the others sat down, they were surrounded by people, mostly Wizengamot counselors, Aurors and reporters. In the center of the venue stood a 2-meter-high metal cage, surrounded by a large number of spikes pointing inward. Director Barty Crouch sat in the middle of the judgment seat, and Anduin sat next to Dumbledore and Moody. Everyone is here, let's begin. Barty Crouch said after looking around. The Department of Prior Law Enforcement has interrogated all the Death Eaters, and all the Death Eaters have pleaded guilty and have been taken to Azkaban. However, one of the Death Eaters, Igor Karkaroff, has expressed his willingness to provide information to the Ministry of Magic in exchange for a reduction in sentence or release. Today I need you to judge together whether the value of the information provided by the Death Eater meets the criteria for sentence reduction or release. Each Wizengamot member has one vote. Then Barty Crouch tilted his head to look at Anduin. This trial is rather special. This is a Death Eater you arrested personally, and it involves his freedom. Minister Badno said that Anduin can also have a vote. Do you agree with this? Agree. Agree. The Wizengamot counselors around expressed their opinions one after another. Obviously, they were unwilling to embarrass the freshly minted combat hero over such trivial matters. Oh, you took my feelings into consideration, so you arranged it this way? Minister Badno is really good at winning people's hearts. Only one vote does not affect the overall situation, but it also shows enough respect. Anduin nodded to Director Crouch thoughtfully. But I will not vote against it today. The prisoner you are trying is my future younger brother. Okay, bring Igor Karkaroff up. Then there was a sound of gears and chains twisting in the metal cage in the center, and Karkaroff was raised through the hole under the cage. Karkaroff looked at the crowd of onlookers who suddenly appeared around him with some fear, especially after seeing Anduin. He glanced at him nervously from time to time. But Anduin showed a curious expression as if he met for the first time, which also reminded Karkaroff, and then he stopped diverting his gaze and looked at Director Crouch opposite him seriously. Igor Karkaroff, at your request, we will give you the opportunity of this trial. Provide the council with the information and evidence you know. If your information is judged to be valuable enough, we will even consider ordering you to be released. Are you willing to accept this condition? Director Crouch asked. Accept, Director. Karkaroff couldn't help but glance at Anduin again, then nodded in response. What are you willing to provide? Names, the names of Death Eaters. Karkaroff swallowed his saliva and said according to Anduin's arrangement. Continue. Director Crouch asked with interest. Then Karkaroff reported to the director one by one according to the list of Death Eaters he got from Anduin, including August Rookwood, the spy of the Department of Mysteries, the Carey brothers and sisters, Avery, Rowley Axley's brother Coburn Axley, etc. He confessed all the people on the list except Snappy. The details of his report surprised everyone present. In addition to the crimes that the Death Eaters had committed, there was even their current location. Such a detailed report caused a lot of criticism from the people around, including Director Barty Crouch, who was stunned. Finally, there is, Karkaroff said this, but he couldn't help but look at Anduin. After seeing the other party nod slightly, he gritted his teeth and shouted out the name. Barty Crouch Jr. What? Everyone was shocked when they heard the words, and they all cried out in surprise. They looked at Barty Crouch in the center of the rostrum, and then turned to look for his son who was also at the scene. Barty Crouch Jr. was sitting not far from Anduin. In fact, Karkaroff noticed something was wrong when he started to confess. This guy knew too much, and he could even tell a current location clearly, as if he had obtained the internal list of the Death Eaters. After Karkaroff shouted out his name, Barty Jr. finally couldn't help it. His face was hideous, and he frantically drew out his wand and pointed it at the other party. You bastard, traitor. Die. Avada, ah. Just as Barty Crouch Jr. stood up and prepared to commit the crime, a silver light flashed. Everyone saw that it was a silver metal snake. At this time, the silver snake bit Barty Crouch Jr.'s wrist tightly and continued to entangle his arm, instantly interrupting his spell. In fact, Anduin had already been paying attention to him when Karkaroff was about to say Barty Crouch Jr.'s name. When Barty Crouch Jr. just took out his wand, Anduin quickly cast the soul-binding serpent. Catch him, quick. The Aurors who were watching quickly pounced on Barty Crouch Jr., and Anduin also took back his soul-binding serpent. Damn it, it's all your fault, you little bastard. Anduin Wilson. When Barty Crouch Jr. was held by the Aurors and dragged past Anduin, Barty Crouch Jr. looked at Anduin with a ferocious face, wishing he could swallow him alive on the spot. Hectares, the wail of a loser. Anduin coldly watched Barty the Younger being dragged away by the Auror, without reacting to his curse. If it wasn't for Karkaroff's acquittal, I wouldn't have let you go so easily. Anduin thought to himself. Good fellow, Anduin, you reacted quickly enough. I thought that boy was not right before, but I didn't expect that he was actually a Death Eater. Moody beside him patted Anduin's shoulder happily. It was just luck. I didn't have time to pull out my wand. Anduin shook his head slightly. Barty Crouch the Younger was actually a Death Eater. This surprising news still echoed in the meeting hall, and even Barty Crouch, the person involved, was speechless for a while. The scene fell into a commotion for a while, and Minister Crouch did not react for a while until Dumbledore stood up. Silence. After Dumbledore's shock, everyone calmed down at this time. But the trial still had to continue, but Director Barty Crouch seemed to have not recovered from this shocking news. As the father of Barty Crouch Jr., and as the party involved, I am no longer qualified to continue presiding over this trial. Director Crouch seemed to come to his senses, raised his head and looked at Dumbledore. Dumbledore, please take over the next interrogation. After that, Director Crouch staggered down from the podium and walked out of the courtroom with a heavy heart. Sorry for being a few minutes late, it was late today and it was published on time. Chapter 204. Protective Array, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. After that, Dumbledore calmly took over the trial and made a verdict on the spot with the vote of the council. Igor Karkaroff was released in court for providing extremely valuable information. After the trial, Anduin said goodbye to everyone and returned to Longbottom House with Augusta. In the next few days, the Wizard radio station and various newspapers continued to report the news of the celebration banquet. The battle hero deserves the title. Anduin Wilson challenged 10 adult wizards on the spot at the banquet and won a complete victory. Minister Badno gave a speech and vowed to fight the Death Eaters to the end. Shock. Barty Crouch Jr., the son of the director of the Law Enforcement Department, was confirmed to be a Death Eater and was arrested on the spot. Barty Crouch resigned from the position of Director of the Law Enforcement Department. Amelia Bones now takes over the position of Director. Exclusive report. The secrets about the battle hero Anduin Wilson that you don't know about, an exclusive interview with his close friend, Vivian. When Anduin was reading the newspaper, he seemed to see a strange news, but he didn't care about these things at this time. After returning to the Longbottom family, Anduin spent a few days visiting the neighbors around him, including the Weasleys, the Diggories and the Lovegoods, chatting with them, and gave each of them a defensive amulet as a gift. At the same time, he also accepted an exclusive interview with Rita Skeeter. Of course, it was called an exclusive interview, but in fact he just gave the other party a copy of the written press release and took some photos. Rita Skeeter was very satisfied with this. Anduin not only held her little secret in his hand, but he was also a fighting hero of the Ministry of Magic. Others wanted to interview her but had no chance. Her exclusive report had already grabbed enough status for her. After doing these things, Anduin officially said goodbye to Augusta and moved to Diagon Alley. He would complete the security system of this house in the next period of time, and then digest the gains of this period of time. The first thing he started was the protection work. He had to prioritize his own safety, even though the reputation of the Ministry of Magic was at its peak during this period, and no Death Eaters or Dark Wizards dared to run out and wander around. But with Anduin's character, he would feel uncomfortable if he didn't make it foolproof. He started to arrange the protective array for the whole house first. The material he chose was Parasol brass. Although this material was cheap, there was enough of it. The ones he had were enough to cover the entire outer wall of the house and serve as the magic pipeline for the array. Anduin first used magic to card the talisman array he designed on the wall, and then melted the Parasol brass into filaments and inlaid them along the lines of the array. Just like completing a piece of cloison in enamel art, all the lines are continuous and transparent. It finally took 5 days, and Anduin carved the walls and floors of the whole house, including the fireplace and the entrance to the sewer, with the array, which almost used up all the Parasol brass he had. The function of this array is to serve as a channel for the output of magic power. In addition, there is the coordination spell he has just learned. The center of the array was placed in the bedroom in the basement. Based on this array, multiple layers of spells can be covered on it, and the output of magic power can support the operation of the spells. In this way, there is no need to recast the spells every once in a while like those Death Eaters. But supporting the array requires magic power. In order to solve this problem, he plans to enchant the energy absorption spell that he has previously tested and improved inside and outside the house to absorb the free magic power from the outside world. At the same time, he will do experiments in the house himself, and the magic power released when casting spells can also be absorbed and used again. The excess magic power can also be guided to the storage spell he has engraved. In this way, a complete set of magic power circulation array is completed. The next step is to arrange the protection spells. According to the defensive map he drew before, he began to engrave various protection and warning spells on the rune array. It took another 3 days to complete the arrangement of all the protection units, and even the protection spells at the entrance of the basement were all updated. The protection includes all the protection, safeguard, anti-rapture hole opening spell, anti-apparition, anti-intrusion spell, etc. The warning includes traces of humans, tracking spell, confusing spell, blocking ears, malicious sense, etc. This house is almost like a miniature fortress. People outside cannot see or hear what is going on inside. If someone with malicious intentions is watching nearby, the alarm will be triggered. And it is impossible to enter by apparition or unlocking spell, and it can only be entered by force. In the future, I will find time to add some active and passive defensive props to the house, such as mines, traps, and defensive structures. For now, let's make do with it. Anduin was quite satisfied with the current defensive strength. At this moment, the house's warning spell suddenly alerted him that someone appeared in front of his house, but no malicious intentions were detected. Then the door on the first floor was knocked. "You finally came here. I thought you were going to run away." Anduin smiled at Karkaroff in front of the door. "Master, I'm only loyal to you and dare not disobey your orders." Karkaroff, wearing a cloak, glanced around nervously. "It's just that I was just released. The Ministry of Magic doesn't trust me, and the Death Eaters regard me as a thorn in their eyes, so I can only hide in secret for a while." "Okay, come in." Anduin opened the door and didn't listen to the other party's nonsense. He led Karkaroff into the house and sat down in the living room on the second floor. Master, I have reported the list to the Ministry of Magic according to your order. Don't you think so? Karkaroff pointed to his stomach and looked at Anduin with some hesitation. He knew the end of Torquil. He died suddenly in front of everyone, and the metal pill that killed Torquil was fed to him by Anduin in front of him. He still has one of these in his stomach, which is why Karkaroff has been unable to sleep and eat, and he dares not betray Anduin at all. Don't worry, just let it stay in your stomach first. The quality of the capsule is very guaranteed. There will be no problem with it for more than 10 or 20 years. I'm not the kind of person who kills people indiscriminately, as long as you behave yourself. Anduin said with a smile. You can tell Torquil this. I saw that you didn't show any mercy when you killed Torquil, Karkaroff muttered secretly in his heart, and at the same time, he looked at Anduin with a bitter face and some helplessness. Chapter 205 Analysis of Thunder Magic Rune, asking for monthly ticket recommendation ticket. Why do you have any objections? Anduin said with a straight face, seeing that Karkaroff seemed a little dissatisfied. No, I dare not. Karkaroff quickly put on a flattering expression and smiled. What are your plans next? With your identity, it is not appropriate for me to take you in openly, and I think you will soon be unable to stay in the British magic world. White wizards don't like you, and dark wizards want you dead. Anduin took a glass of butterbeer from the wine cabinet next to him and handed it to Karkaroff. Thank you, Master. Karkaroff drank the drink a little stiffly. My younger brother teaches at the Nordic Strange School of Magic. These days, I thought of him when I was looking for a place to stay in accordance with your orders. In his reply to me, he said that he was happy to accept me. If you allow, I think I could go to his place. Which school is relatively tolerant of dark magic? It is very suitable for you. Anduin nodded and took out a letter and a piece of parchment from his arms. Going to Northern Europe can also allow you to temporarily escape from the pursuit of those Death Eaters, which is good, but you have to do a few things for me after you go there. This letter is what Yaxley is going to send to his brother. When you arrive in Europe, you will find him according to this letter and monitor him. Of course, you can prioritize your own safety and try to do it after you settle down. At least you need to know where he is, understand? Yes, Master. Karkaroff handed the envelope and nodded. The materials I need are on this parchment. Some of these materials cannot be obtained in the UK except through smuggling. You should try to collect them for me. Then Anduin took out a leather bag from his body and handed it to him. Here are 500 gold galleons, keep it. Use it to purchase materials and for you to reach Northern Europe. If you don't have enough money when collecting materials, you can send me a letter, but don't think of deceiving me. I know the value of these things. I understand, Master, don't worry. Karkaroff called the Master so sweetly and happily accepted the bag of money. And this is a message tracking amulet. Keep it close to you. I will follow it to find you in the future. If you lose it, I can only find you through the thing in your stomach. If the capsule explodes due to instability, it will not be my business. Anduin took out an amulet and threw it to Karkaroff. Ah, it's my master. Karkaroff took the amulet nervously and put it close to his body. He planned to find a chain to put it on and hang it around his neck every day after returning. Put everything away and set off quickly. Although the dark wizards in the territory are very low-key now, there may be someone targeting you. After saying this, Anduin looked at Karkaroff seriously. Remember to complete my task. You know my methods. Don't play tricks on me. Yes, Master, I promise to complete the task. Don't worry. After listening to Anduin's instructions, Karkaroff knew that his life still had an effect on him, so he put his mind at ease and answered seriously. Then Karkaroff quietly left along Anduin's fireplace. Anduin had a clear plan for his future. He would definitely go to the interior of Europe. Now was the right time for Karkaroff to help him explore the way. After dealing with Karkaroff's affairs, Anduin could finally do his own thing with peace of mind. First, he returned to the second bedroom on the third floor. He arranged it as a study and laboratory. At the same time, he also planned to arrange the basement as a secret laboratory. If he had some shameful materials in the future, he could do research there. After closing the door, Anduin could not wait to take out the metal magic book. Then he turned directly to the page of the ancient lightning rune. He was ready to officially start analyzing this primitive rune. He had never tried to analyze the primitive rune before. Under the guidance of Professor Bones, he had analyzed many basic runes. To analyze a rune, one needs to stretch one's own magic power and come into contact with the corresponding rune, because it is difficult to understand the subtle structures of many runes and runes with the naked eye. After all, only after fully understanding the structure of magic runes can one use one's own magic power to construct magic runes, and the subsequent combination into spells and translation into incantations are all subsequent development and optimization work. Therefore, those scholars who can directly restore paper magic runes from relics or ancient texts can almost be said to be creating something out of nothing. Of course, it may take them decades to restore a magic rune. But analyzing unknown magic runes, especially unknown original magic runes, is also dangerous. No one knows what will happen after using their own magic power to contact such magic runes. So Anduin made full preparations for this. First, he almost emptied the room except for the necessary furniture. Then he placed various magic potions next to the test bench, including white fresh potion, tonic, anti-scalding potion, etc. And also prepared the full potion. As for why he didn't put it directly in the space bag, it was mainly because he was afraid that the magic power would be consumed too much later. If he lacked physical strength, this kind of potion that could be taken at hand would be more convenient. Secondly, he prepared a set of plastic clothes for himself, covering his whole body from head to toe except for the right hand that needed to hold the magic wand. After all, the lightning room must comply with the laws of physics. Wearing a non-conductive plastic suit can prevent the current from running wild and causing secondary damage. After everything was ready, Anduin carefully held the magic wand and slowly stretched it towards the lightning rune. Zilrab. 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 Suddenly, something strange happened. Anduin just moved the magic wand forward, and before he even had time to output magic power, an electric current rushed to the magic wand. This scene scared Anduin, but he still calmed his mind as quickly as possible. After he carefully observed it, he found that there was no pain or discomfort. It was just that the magic rune seemed to be attracted by his magic wand, and electric current kept coming out and drilling into the magic wand. As for dark painting, his magic wand seemed to be stimulated, and fine silver-blue light appeared along the fine lines on his body, and the right hand holding the magic wand did not feel any discomfort. What is this? Could it be that this magic rune resonated with dark painting? Anduin had some guesses in his mind, but he was still not sure. It doesn't look like a bad thing. I'm afraid it has something to do with the material of dark painting's own lightning feathers and lightning-struck wood. I still have to use magic power to try it out. With an idea in mind, Anduin began to output magic power slowly. After the magic power finally came into contact with the lightning magic rune, Anduin couldn't help but let out a comfortable cry. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 206. Wild Thunder, asking for monthly ticket recommendation. But when the magic power in his body really came into contact with the magic rune, Anduin only felt a weak electric current passing through his wand and arm straight to his brain, and then a brilliant spark like the discharge of brain neurons ballooned in his brain. It was a numb, cold, goosebump-inducing feeling, and after the current flashed, it left him with a refreshing feeling like just taking a shower in summer, which was very comfortable. After he concentrated again, he could clearly feel that his magic power was blending with the lightning magic rune in his wand, which even deepened his connection with the dark painting. And his wand also underwent a wonderful change under this influence. The dark-painted Thunderbird wand core under the influence of the thunder and lightning magic rune gave him a feeling of renewed vitality. It's incredible, this feeling is like the breath of life on the dark painting. Could this magic rune also come from the Thunderbird? Anduin noticed the specialness of this magic rune, as if it had an original connection with himself and his wand. Since this rune is not dangerous, let's analyze it in one go. With the previous perception, Anduin became bolder and gradually extended the magic power along the dark painting to the rune. Boom. When his perception followed the magic power into the rune burst into dazzling silver light, and the light kept flickering in the house. If someone could look in from outside the house, they would even think that the people inside were dancing. Unlike this violent light and shadow effect, Anduin felt the opposite from this rune. A foreign scene emerged in his mind, which seemed to be the memory of the owner of this rune before his death. There he saw a desolate wasteland with sparse trees. Looking down from the sky, He could clearly see the sparse yellow grass and dead trees on the ground, as well as the rattlesnakes entrenched next to the weeds, and occasionally some antelopes and hares running on the ground. The owner of this vision was very fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, he began to climb from low altitude. The scene on the ground gradually became small, replaced by clouds that kept appearing around him. The target of the owner of this vision was in front of him. It was a mottled and thick dark cloud, like a black curtain, like a piece of iron connected by a mountain gorge, pressing down on the ground with great force. The wind roared like a devil, and the cross-cutting lightning was like claws tearing the sky. It was chasing the storm. Anduin followed the vision and plunged into the center of the storm. The wind and rain kept torturing him, but he rushed to the sky without hesitation, to the center of the raging thunderstorm. As the vision was pulled closer, the lightning passed by him, and a series of crackling sounds broke out in the air. It seemed that a dry smell could be smelled in the air. But this seemed to make the owner of the vision more excited and happy. Then he twisted hard and embraced the thickest and strongest silver lightning that struck from the sky. Anduin could even feel joy and sadness from this memory. He was happy because of his instinctive persistence in evolution and his love for lightning, and he was sad because his life was about to end. As he met the lightning, a strong magic suddenly surged from the owner of the vision. Then there was a scene that Anduin would never forget. This magic seemed to turn it into a lightning rod, constantly attracting the surrounding electric charges. All the lightning in the center of the thunderstorm seemed to have found a target and rushed towards it. The magic in its body became more and more vigorous, allowing it to gradually climb to a peak, as if it would win a new life after crossing this peak. But this peak seemed to be right in front of him, and it seemed to be far away in the sky. It had almost drained all the electric charges within a radius of several miles, but it seemed to be a little short. In the end, the owner of this vision exhausted all his strength, but failed to achieve a breakthrough. He could only regretfully slide down from the sky with lightning all over his body. And the scene in the memory also came to an abrupt end. What is this? Anduin finally came back to his senses from that memory. The dying memory of a thunderbird. An old thunderbird chasing a thunderstorm, trying to find a breakthrough from it. In the end, it seemed to be just a little short, so it had to disappear with regret, and this lightning rune condensed on its corpse. I didn't expect that this rune would still retain the final memory of this thunderbird, allowing me to appreciate the magnificent scene of fighting against nature and myself. Anduin sighed, as if he had just come back to his senses from that memory, but he gradually analyzed the origin and truth of this rune. No wonder the magic rune and the dark painting resonate with each other. They are relatives. And this original magic rune seems to have condensed a vitality belonging to the thunderbird. It's incredible. But if the thunderbird absorbs enough lightning, can it really be reborn? I haven't found any corresponding records in various books about magical creatures. This may be a new discovery of magical creatures like thunderbirds. The feeling of chasing new life is a bit like the legend of eagles plucking feathers and breaking beaks to come back to life. Anduin shook his head. He was not a magical biologist and didn't want to delve into it. The most urgent thing was to quickly analyze this magic rune. In fact, after Anduin entered that memory, he had already formed a connection with this magic rune. It can even be said that he almost experienced the process of the formation of this original magic rune again. So when he poured magic power into the magic rune again and tried to analyze the magic rune, it was no longer very easy, but simply a breeze. It took only a few minutes for Anduin to clearly understand the structure and texture of the rune. It can even be said that even if you give this rune to someone else to analyze, they will not be able to understand it as well as he did. After Anduin took off his plastic suit, he held his left hand in the air, and a lightning rune constructed with his magic power appeared clearly in his palm. Although we haven't conducted any follow-up tests yet, just the manifestation of it can clearly show how powerful you are. Anduin smiled as he looked at the rune. Since you were born from the wasteland, this lightning rune will be called Wasteland Thunder. The derivative rune of the fire element rune is Fierce Fire, and the derivative rune of the lightning element rune is Wasteland Thunder, which is quite appropriate. Anduin looked at the shining lightning rune in his hand and said with great satisfaction. Chapter 207. Development Ideas for Thunder Magic Runes. Then Anduin moved his eyes to the magic book again. The original lightning rune was still lying there quietly. Since you were from Thunderbird, you should be able to coexist harmoniously with Anduin. Anduin had a new idea. He once again put Anduin close to the original rune, and then urged the magic power to absorb the rune. Then, with a slurp, the original rune was absorbed into Anduin's body. After Anduin accepted the original rune, it was like taking a tonic pill. The Thunderbird feather core in his body became more energetic, and the lightning struck ebony outside was also moisturized. The originally made colored handle of the wand bloomed with circles of silver halos. After gradually calming down, it returned to its original made color again, but the fine lines on the magic wand seemed to be inlaid with strands of silver threads, which was very beautiful. Very good, it seems that Anduin is very satisfied with the Wild Thunder rune. Anduin nodded with satisfaction. Next, we have to focus on testing the various indicators of the Wild Thunder. He did what he said, and Anduin quickly cleaned up the laboratory. The plastic protective suit and potion were not used, and now they were all put away. Then Anduin took out instruments from his space bag, and then carefully placed and connected them. The main thing is to conduct a voltage test, compare the Wild Thunder with the basic lightning rune, and start with the magic output of 5 quarters. After saying that, Anduin started the large multimeter on the test bench. This is a standard instrument for measuring voltage. He bought one from a Muggle store before. Then he took out a small rack with a 1 mm thick copper wire on it, and then carefully connected the 2 poles of the multimeter to the copper wire. After that, Anduin did not use the magic wand. The dark emblem now contained the Wild Thunder rune. It was obvious that the Wild Thunder rune would have a buffing effect on the spells cast, so casting with the magic wand would affect the accuracy of data collection. Anduin clenched his left hand, and an ordinary lightning rune appeared in his palm. Then he controlled his magic output and guided the current to discharge to the copper wire with a magic output of 5 ticks. Maintaining this state, he discharged 10 times in a row and recorded the data on the multimeter one by one. After that, the lightning rune dispersed and the Wild Thunder rune appeared. It also controlled the magic output of 5 ticks and discharged to the copper wire 10 times, and recorded the data. With my willpower and the calmness of my controlled emotions, the magic intensity did not fluctuate greatly. Under this premise, after the ordinary lightning magic rune was tested, the average voltage was about 200 V for 10 times, and the average voltage after the Wild Thunder test was about 1000 V. That is to say, with the same magic output and the same magic intensity, the voltage that the Wild Thunder can generate is 5 times the ordinary voltage. Is it so exaggerated? Anduin compared the data in surprise. This is beyond the scope of low-voltage electricity. If it is practiced for a long time and amplified by the dark painting, the output ratio will be increased, and it will even reach the power of high or ultra-high voltage in the future. This discovery gave Anduin greater confidence in the potential of the Wild Thunder. It really deserves to be an ancient primitive magic rune. But we have to consider that electricity will be greatly attenuated when it propagates in the air. This is also the reason why I have not practiced lightning magic before. If you want to extend the attack range, you need sufficient strength and conductors. The best conductor is actually magic power, which means that the longer the attack distance, the more magic power is consumed. Or borrow other conductors, such as water flow, metal. Anduin was thinking about the application direction of Wild Thunder in combat tactics. Directly using lightning to attack requires a lot of magic support. If you want to reduce magic loss, you have to be fast and complete the casting at a fast enough speed, or match it with other spells, or form some attack runes. Then Anduin followed his inspiration and recorded the next research direction of Wild Thunder on parchment. First, develop high-speed and high-density electric shock spells. Second, try to replace the lightning runes in the existing lightning magic with Wild Thunder, such as weather spell. Third, develop other functions based on the laws of electrical energy, such as ball lightning, electromagnetic cannon, electromagnetic pulse, etc. Fourth, develop tactics that can be used in conjunction with other spells, such as electric water gun, flying crow adding thunderstorm function, etc. Fifth, make equipment that can be matched with and carry Wild Thunder. For example, if the soul-binding serpent is also engraved with the Wild Thunder rune, the effect should be good. Sixth, test and experiment whether the Wild Thunder rune has other characteristics, just like the Fiendish Fire, which is also a primitive rune, is not only powerful, but also has terrible characteristics such as being almost impossible to extinguish, camouflage, and actively burning all combustible objects around it. After determining the research direction, Anduin was ready to calm down and develop the newly obtained Wild Thunder rune in the rest of the summer vacation. At the same time, it was time to digest the many books and knowledge looted from the Travs family. With the large number of materials in hand, his alchemy had more room to display. The following was a boring period. Anduin studied books in the morning and began to conduct various spell experiments and spell casting exercises in the laboratory in the afternoon, or draw blueprints to make alchemy props. Only when it was time for dinner, Anduin would go to the leaky cauldron to have a good meal with Tom and chat with him. Soon, Anduin's summer vacation passed quickly, and he came to King's Cross Station alone again. However, unlike before, the low-key Anduin attracted everyone's attention at platform 9 3/4. During this month, Anduin actually changed his outfit completely. The monocle in front of him changed from the original brass color to silver, and his hair was cut short, but he was still recognized by everyone. It's no wonder that in this summer, news about Anduin, the fighting hero, can be seen almost every day, whether it is serious or not. This made him almost 100% turn around, and everyone pointed at him, but he was very calm. After getting on the train, he found an empty compartment and got in. "Hey, Anduin, how was your summer vacation?" Vivian greeted Anduin as usual after entering the compartment. "You?" Anduin glanced at her speechlessly. "What's the matter with that so-called exclusive report?" Chapter 208. Don't be afraid, it won't hurt. "Ah. I haven't seen you for a while. Why did you change your hairstyle? You suddenly cut your hair so short that I can hardly recognize you." Vivian quickly changed the subject when she heard Anduin asking about the report. Seeing Vivian still talking about something else, Anduin couldn't help but glare at her. Seeing Anduin's expression, Vivian said awkwardly, "You're asking about the interview. It just so happened that I met a reporter at the banquet that day. He was very interested in your news. You don't know that the gossip about you was worth a lot of money at the time, so you sold me out?" Anduin looked at her speechlessly. "Don't say it so harshly. I'm doing this for your own good. Isn't this going to help you become famous? You are now a celebrity in the wizarding world." Vivian giggled and tried to get away with it. "Holding barbecue parties in the school every day and torturing classmates with inhuman training, is this the way you mean to make me famous? And why did you spend half of the article in the report talking about your mahjong club?" Anduin scolded. "That reporter is writing nonsense, it has nothing to do with me." Vivian argued loudly, "And he wrote these things because he is interested in my mahjong club." Vivian was so thick-skinned that she was fooling around, and Anduin was really helpless with her. At this time, Charles and Viren also walked into the carriage. "Good, you guys hurry up and sit down." After seeing the few people, Anduin said while putting things on his body. "Huh? What's wrong? By the way, why did you change your hairstyle? Wasn't your long hair quite elegant before?" Charles asked curiously, but he also sat down obediently. "Do me a favor." Anduin took out a small wooden rack with test tubes inserted on it, and also took out several sets of plastic-sealed medical needles, iodine tincture for disinfection, cotton swabs and other things. What are you going to do?" Vivian has lived in the Muggle world since she was a child. She could tell at a glance that these were things for drawing blood, and immediately showed a look of fear. "Don't be nervous. I'll give you a physical examination to see how your magic reserves are." Anduin looked at Vivian expressionlessly, then grabbed her arm. "You, don't come over here. I was wrong. I shouldn't have been interviewed by those gossip magazines. Don't draw my blood. I'm afraid of the pain." She watched Anduin roll up his sleeves and then skillfully apply disinfectant on the inside of his arms. Although Vivian struggled and begged, it was still useless. Anduin didn't give her any chance to break free. He held her tightly and said seriously, "Don't move. If you insert it in the wrong place, you'll have to reinsert it. It's inserted. Don't. It hurts. It's bleeding, blood is flowing out." Vivian was so angry that tears were about to flow down. Anduin just drew half a test tube of blood from her. Charles and others on the side looked at Anduin's neat movements and were terrified. Although they were slacking off during the summer vacation, they shouldn't be so cruel. After collecting Vivian's blood, Anduin immediately put on the label, nodded with satisfaction, and then turned his head to look at the others. "It's your turn next. Don't worry, it will be quick. You see, Vivian is no longer crying, right? No, tell me clearly, what is this for? You don't want to study black magic, do you?" Charles still asked in confusion. "Didn't I tell you to test your magic reserves? Why are you so nervous?" Anduin stretched out his claws towards Charles. 10 minutes later, Anduin sorted the test tubes in front of him with a satisfied look, while everyone else had an expression of surviving a disaster. As people who have lived in the wizarding world since childhood, they could not understand Anduin's behavior at all. Their parents taught them that blood is the medium for launching black magic such as curses. The fact that Anduin could easily draw blood from his body was mainly due to their trust in him. But even so, they were still in a state of confusion at this moment, because they did not understand what Anduin said before. We're wizards. When did you change your profession to become a doctor? You need to draw blood. If you need to do a blood test, you don't have a machine. Vivian, who was the only one who was a little reluctant because of fear of pain, asked in confusion. Just wait and see. Anduin smiled slightly, and then began to take out a few more things. He took out a plate-sized object, which looked like a mirror without a mirror, and a little like a modern electronic scale, with a smooth round surface in the middle and two small boxes showing numbers below. Then he handed it to Vivian. Come on, put your hand on it. What, are you going to do something weird to me again? Vivian was a little afraid of him now. Since this summer vacation, he suddenly had a lot of weird things on him. It doesn't hurt this time, don't panic. Anduin comforted with a blank face. Vivian, who was skeptical, put her hand on the disc, and then a magic wave flashed on the disc, extending from her palm to her whole body, as if scanning something. After a while, a line of numbers appeared under the disc, and Anduin quickly recorded it after seeing it. Then he took out a dropper-shaped prop, and adjusted it a few times in his hand, and then put it into the test tube containing Vivian's blood. After that, the dropper-shaped prop automatically sucked out a certain amount of blood, and then Anduin connected the dropper to the disc with a metal wire, and another number was displayed below the original number on the disc. 168 minutes. How come your level is the same as that of a third-year freshman? It seems that your previous foundation was too poor. You need to work harder this school year. Anduin shook his head with some dissatisfaction. What? What are you doing? Why don't I understand? Listening to Anduin's words, Vivian suddenly had an ominous premonition. This is the magic meter 2.0 that I just developed. Anduin raised the disc and dropper in his hand. This disc is responsible for detecting the total amount of blood in your body, and the dropper is responsible for accurately absorbing a certain amount of blood and measuring the magic value contained in it. I found out through experiments some time ago that the magic reserve in a wizard's blood accounts for exactly half of the total magic power in the body, so as long as you draw a part of the blood in the body and measure its magic value, multiply it by the total amount of blood and then multiply it by 2, you can measure the total magic reserve in the body. Chapter 209 Exploring the Forbidden Forest. So when the disc measures the total amount of blood in the body and the dropper measures a certain amount of magic, connect them and the magic program I set up can calculate Vivian's magic value. Anduin explained to everyone. What do you mean by 168? Velen was quite interested in the instrument Anduin mentioned, and asked quickly. It is the unit I use to mark magic. The magic consumed by casting the luminescent spell is 1, which means that Vivian's magic is only enough to cast the luminescent spell 168 times in a row. Then I am still pretty good. Hearing this, Vivian said with some complacency. You're already in the 4th grade, and your magic reserve is only at the level of a 3rd grader. What is there to be proud of? Anduin said with a straight face. Hearing this, Vivian couldn't help but pout. What can I do? I can't make it grow by itself. So we need to strengthen training. Anduin ignored Vivian's reluctant expression and looked at the others. You too. Then Anduin used the same method to test several people. After digitizing their magic values, it became much clearer. Velen, 382, has the highest value among these people, and is expected to break the 400 standard before the 7th grade. Charles, 257, not bad. Bill, 143, I guess he can surpass Vivian with more practice. Evie, 118, his weak physique still has some impact. After checking everyone's magic value, Anduin also had a clear understanding in his mind. Velen has the highest value among these people, but that's because he is old, and it's normal to have such performance. Charles's increase is very large, much higher than the result of his vague measurement last year. It seems that after the 3rd grade, young wizards will usher in a period of magic growth. Ibrahimovich's level is actually normal, after all, he is only in the 2nd grade, but from Bill's numerical value, he has the strongest potential. If trained properly, he may even have a chance to surpass Charles in 2 years. Moreover, with the new measuring instrument, the following training experiments can be carried out more smoothly. The magic growth curve of each age, physical training, magic sensitivity training, willpower training, energy intake and other items on the efficiency of magic can also be observed through group experiments. Then Anduin looked at his previously measured magic value, 418 ticks. It seems that eating more magical creature meat is still very effective. Then Anduin looked at everyone with the eyes of looking at the test subject, and then glanced at Vivian, and also had a plan on how to divide the test groups. Viren is approaching adulthood, and laying the foundation has no obvious effect, so let him do more combat tactics training. As for the group experiment, after school, he plans to let Ibrahimovic conduct independent physical training, Bill specializes in sensitivity training, and Charles will let him stand to temper his will. As for Vivian, since you were afraid of hardship, then you'll work hard for me. I want to see how much effect eating magical creatures meat every day has on the increase of magic power. Then rotate one project every month, and then do cross-training in multiple projects, so that he can always find a pattern. Thinking of this, Anduin couldn't help but sneer, and the people around him got goosebumps. Hogwarts ushered in another new school year. For Anduin, this year is a simple year, but for other young wizards, this summer vacation is too exciting. It can be clearly seen from the entrance ceremony that almost everyone, whether old students or freshmen, focused their attention on Anduin. This teenager, who usually has no sense of existence in school, was even nicknamed the Snape Court Ghost. Now he has become a fighting hero, which makes more people remember Anduin's name. This is even more true for the students in Slytherin College, especially those pure blood wizards before. Originally, they were blackmailed by Anduin, and were still trying to find a way to get rid of him. As a result, this kid suddenly became a hero. It was like a dream, and a desperate nightmare. But Anduin didn't care about the strange looks from others. His thoughts were all immersed in his own research, and he didn't care about others. Even when he returned to the common room, he went back to the dormitory without stopping to tinker with his own things. Those little wizards from the same college didn't even have a chance to come up and talk to him. 2 months later, on the weekend, outside the Forbidden Forest, Anduin was fully armed and began to move towards the depths of the Forbidden Forest. This was his first attempt to go deep into the Forbidden Forest. Usually, he would just hang around the periphery and help Hagrid feed the magical animal colonies he raised. The reason why he appeared here today was that Hagrid complained to him that when he patrolled the Forbidden Forest, he found that many magical creatures were cruelly killed, and even affected the magical creatures raised by the college. A Tepperwarthog and a Ream Bull were brutally dismembered, and a Hippogriff was also seriously injured, and the wounds on its body did not look like those caused by predators. This made Professor Kettleburn and Hagrid very worried, so Hagrid has stepped up patrols recently. Originally, this had nothing to do with Anduin, but Tepperwarthogs and Ream Bulls were important food for him. He had spent most of his time in the magical creatures class in the past 2 years helping Professor Kettleburn raise these 2 animals. He had finally raised them fat and strong, and he himself hadn't had time to start eating them, and someone actually snatched food from his mouth. How could he tolerate this? Moreover, Hagrid was a little worried about letting him face this unknown threat alone, so he decided to investigate it himself. By the way, he could also test the results of his research during this period, including upgraded alchemical equipment and newly developed talismans. This should be it. The Hippogriff was attacked here last time. There are still traces of blood on the ground. Let's start from here. Anduin squatted down and stretched out his fingers, picking up some dark red dirt from the ground and inspected it. After he wiped off the dirt in his hands, he raised his hand and pinched the monocle on his right eye. Then another scene appeared in his sight. The place with blood on the ground kept flashing a light red light. Anduin pulled out his wand and enchanted to the blood. After casting a spell, more mottled spots of light appeared around the blood in his sight, and even colored like mist appeared in the air above the blood. Chapter 210 Tracking Curse. This is the latest tracking spell developed by Anduin. He calls it the tracking spell. It is based on the tracking spell and is developed by integrating some blood magic, scent runes, and temperature runes. He also engraved the corresponding manifestation spell on the new monocle. When the two are combined, they can detect bloodstains, footprints, scent traces, life characteristics and other elements. The bloodstains on the ground will turn light red in the sight, and the light spots around the ground are traces of biological activities related to the bloodstains. The fog above is the scent trace. At the same time, if there are scratches on the trees and rocks next to them, or if they are touched and stayed for a certain period of time, they will also show different depths of light. There are 2 ways to use this spell. One is non-lock detection, which can see the clues that appear in the field of vision, but the disadvantage is that it is more susceptible to interference, and he needs to carefully distinguish them one by one. However, there is another way to use it, which is to use the tracking spell to lock the sample for precise tracking, just like now he is locking the bloodstains of the Hippogriff, and the light spots that appear around are also related to the Hippogriff. There are the most clues here. There are a lot of bloodstains and feathers on the ground. It is initially judged that they are all from hippogriffs. There are scratches on the trees on both sides. It seems that there was a fierce battle between the two sides. Then Anduin carefully checked the traces left around, mainly the fallen branches on the ground and the claw marks on the trees. There are claw marks different from those of hippogriffs, and no bite marks. It seems that the main attack method of the target creature is claws. The height of the scratches is not low. Could it be a large creature? But judging from the size of the scratches, the creature should not be large. Maybe it was a jumping attack. Anduin made a preliminary inference based on the traces at the scene. The target should be a medium-sized creature weighing no more than 300 kilograms, with powerful forelimbs with more than 4 fingers, agile movements and good jumping ability. The number is unknown. First of all, it is definitely not a dragon. Suspected targets include chimeras, cat leopards, werewolves, nectarine leopards, manticores, griffins, etc. Next, we have to find a way to find it. Then he turned his eyes to the bloodstain again, and found 2 moving traces along the bloodstain, and the smell of blood mist was also divided into 2 sides. One of them leads to the outside of the forbidden forest. It seems to be the escape route of the hippogriff. However, the hippogriff should have been seriously injured. Why doesn't it continue to chase? Anduin checked along the return path again and found that the breath and traces belonging to the hippogriff extended more than 10 meters and then floated directly into the air. It seems that the hippogriff flew away despite the pain, so it was able to escape. In other words, the attacker has no ability to fly, right? Then we can rule out flying creatures like the griffin. Then Anduin returned to the scene again. This time he looked at another trace. As expected, this was the route the target creature took when it left. Since the other party was stained with the blood and breath of the hippogriff, the traces were still clear. Then Anduin began to explore along this path cautiously. Due to the interval of time, the footprints on the ground were either covered by fallen leaves or destroyed by other creatures. Now he could only follow that bloody breath forward. Moreover, these traces were intermittent and constantly weakened, which caused a lot of trouble for his exploration. However, with his persistence, he finally made a discovery. After exploring another kilometer forward, Anduin stopped behind a big tree. What is this? Anduin squatted down, scratched the fallen leaves on the ground with his hands, and then picked up a handful of hair and looked at it. The target should have rested here for a while, so the marks are so heavy, and the hair left behind is dark in color, with blood on it. No. Anduin looked at the blood on the hair and identified it. This is not the blood of a hippogriff. The tracking spell has no effect on it, which means that the target is actually injured. But no other hair and blood samples were found at the battle scene just now. It seems that the target was only slightly injured, or has a strong self-healing ability. Anduin looked at the strand of hair and judged. Then the murderer can be initially determined to be a werewolf or a wetland werewolf, but the wetland werewolves mainly live in America and should be local werewolves, but why did they appear near the outskirts of Hogwarts? No matter, I want to find it first. I don't know if it is a native werewolf or a lycanthropy patient. I hope we can communicate. If it is a native werewolf that lives completely in werewolf form, it will be troublesome and must be solved as soon as possible. After Anduin made a good judgment, he directly used the tracking spell on the tuft of hair. With new clues, the traces in his vision gradually became richer. A grey-like mist was like a transparent ribbon, extending from the tree where Anduin was to the depths of the forbidden forest, winding and crisscrossing. Obviously, from here on, the target's activities became disordered. And from here on, there were many traces of activities of other creatures around, and they were more or less stained with the target's breath, resulting in a mixture of various strange smells, which also interfered with the tracking. In this case, Anduin first used the function of the echo spell to scan the surrounding hundreds of meters to eliminate some wrong breaths. At the same time, he used the tracking spell cross using the blood of the hippogriff and the target, more or less locking the target's direction of travel. Following these remaining traces, Anduin continued to go deeper. At the same time, along the way, he found some traces of activities of other magical creatures and many wild herbs. For these wild herbs, since you see them, you naturally can't let them go. After the harvest, Anduin looked forward to this trip to the Forbidden Forest even more. No matter what the final result is, at least it is not a waste of time. Next, Anduin followed the traces left by the murderer and went deeper. Time passed until he came to a river several meters wide. After arriving here, the clues were cut off. There were no clues along the 2 sides of the river. Does that mean the target crossed the river? Looking at the river in front of him, Anduin frowned and felt a little embarrassed. This river cut off all traces of the murderer. If the werewolf waded across the river water would probably dilute the smell, so he was not sure whether there would be any harvest on the other side of the river. And if the werewolf did not cross the river directly but swam along the river, it would be troublesome. Chapter 211 Clues. After crossing the river, search the area around the crossing point. If you can find any clues, continue. If not, you can only return the same way. After making up his mind, Anduin cast the levitation spell without hesitation and floated across the riverbank. After crossing the river, he had already entered the heart of the Forbidden Forest. No one could tell how big the Forbidden Forest next to Hogwarts was. Anduin looked at the time. It was almost evening. In this case, he could only seize the last moment and try to find some more clues. At the crossing point, Anduin placed a tracking amulet as a positioning, and then began a carpet search with this place as the center. At first, Anduin explored the downstream of the river. If he was the werewolf, he might move downstream after crossing the river. But after half an hour of fan-shaped search, no trace spell or echo spell found anything, which made him a little discouraged. But adhering to the principle of a good end, he operated back to the original location and then began to search upstream. In the 2 months since returning to Hogwarts, with the help of Professor Flitwick, Anduin finally mastered the magic of apparition, which is why he dared to explore the Forbidden Forest alone, ensuring that he could quickly escape when encountering something difficult to control. What is this? Unexpectedly, Anduin found something after searching in this direction for less than a kilometer. He found traces of a fight in an open space not far away. No, this may not be considered a fight, but hunting. A wild deer was disemboweled and lay on the ground in a miserable state of death. There were large claw marks on its neck and torso, which basically matched the werewolf scratches Anduin had found before. The deer carcass was about 10 meters away from the river source, and near the river, Anduin detected the werewolf's breath signal again, although it was very faint, but it was still there. It seems that the target swam upstream for a distance before coming ashore. No wonder there are no clues near the crossing point. Judging from the degree of decay of the corpse, it should be within a day, but the werewolf attacked the hippogriff 2 days ago. That means that the werewolf stayed here to rest for a while, and then found a wild deer, killed it and ate it before continuing to move. It seems that the target is not far away. This discovery gave Anduin great confidence. The intelligence he collected along the way showed that the werewolf seemed to be irrational and his movements were very erratic, often jumping left and right. So the werewolf might not be far away from him in a straight line. It seems that there is hope to catch it within today. Anduin has been very persistent since he found that the target is a werewolf. On the one hand, in order to ensure the safety of the outer perimeter of the Forbidden Forest, this irrational werewolf would pose a great threat if left alone. At the same time, he also hopes to enrich his living material library by capturing a werewolf. He is also very curious about this highly contagious creature. However, after making a new discovery, he did not rush to chase after it, but carefully explored the surroundings. He had to be more careful with dangerous creatures like werewolves. Anduin soon found a suspicious point. On the body of the wild deer, Anduin accidentally found a broken arrow. After removing the arrowhead, it can be seen that it is not a modern bow and arrow style, but a very traditional handmade craft. Could it be? There were others besides the werewolf hunting the wild deer at the time. This arrow is thick and does not look like the specifications commonly used by humans. Is there a centaur nearby? This discovery made Anduin more vigilant. The centaurs near Hogwarts are not good men and women. They are very exclusive, refuse to approach humans, and regard the entire Forbidden Forest as their territory. He occasionally heard Hagrid talk about his story with the centaurs. From his description, most centaurs are very hostile to wizards, and only a few are willing to communicate with humans. The attitude of the wizarding world towards centaurs was also very awkward. On the one hand, they classified centaurs as humans, but on the other hand, they opened a centaur office in the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, which was simply a provocation to them. Hey, let's follow and see what's going on. If the werewolf is killed by the centaurs, retrieve quickly. It's better not to conflict with them as much as possible, otherwise you'll be annoyed to death when you went to the Forbidden Forest next time. Originally, he thought that he only needed to worry about the werewolves, but now it seems that there are also centaurs with unclear positions, so he can only take it one step at a time. After making up his mind, he continued to search and move forward along the breath captured by the tracking spell. What was different from the past was that this time the movement trajectory of the werewolf turned normal. Although there were some twists and turns, it was generally moving in a fixed direction, as if something in that direction attracted it. Although Anduin didn't know why the werewolf suddenly changed its behavior pattern, he could sense something strange and then quickened the pace of tracking. After another hour of chasing, Anduin could sense that he was getting closer and closer to the other party, and he could clearly see the footprints of the werewolf. The movement mode was more like the original werewolf form, sometimes walking on 2 feet, sometimes on 4 feet. It seemed that he was not infected with lycanthropy. But although the distance was getting closer, the sun was gradually setting, and it seemed that it was too late to go back before dark. After thinking about it, Anduin reported to Hogwarts through the communication amulet and informed him that he would not go back at night, and then he stepped on the horse again to chase forward. However, as he got closer and closer, he also gained more unexpected clues. Other footprints appeared not far from the tracking path. After his identification, he confirmed that they were horse hoof prints, and there was more than one. It seemed that there was indeed a centaur involved, but to his surprise, the horse hoof prints were actually in front, and the werewolf footprints were actually moving closer to the centaur footprints. In other words, was this werewolf chasing the centaur in front? But the fighting power of the centaurs is not weak. There is more than one centaur here. Aren't centaurs known for their bravery and warlike nature? They will not run away when facing a werewolf. Instantly, Anduin had a reasonable but unreasonable thought in his mind. Could it be that this werewolf was following these centaurs? But this shouldn't be the case. Who gave it such courage? It didn't care about its life. With many doubts in his heart, Anduin quickened his pace again. This time, he didn't even need to use the tracking spell. He just ran wildly following the footprints. As he gradually approached, Anduin soon found something even more surprising. Chapter 212 Survivor. There are more werewolf footprints. On the route of the werewolf and the centaur, Anduin found that several more werewolf footprints appeared from the side, and merged into the path of the centaur. And he actually found human footprints among them. After discovering this situation, Anduin stopped at the place where the two werewolves met and carefully explored it. He turned on the non-locking mode of the tracking spell, and all the breath and footprints showed that the group of werewolves who suddenly joined came straight in from the depths of the woods next to them, and quickly caught up with the lone werewolf. From the footprints, it can be roughly judged that the number of werewolves is about 4, all of which act in wolf form like the previous lone werewolf. There are also footprints of a human, wearing shoes of large size, which can be judged to be a tall male human. Is the human traveling with the werewolf infected with lycanthropy? Is he a companion or a leader? If the werewolves who followed up were in the same group as the previous lone werewolf, and there was a leader in command, then the things involved here are complicated. At the same time, under his tracking spell, Anduin also found a lot of blood traces, which looked quite strong and spread along the route that the werewolves came from. Did these werewolves fight other battles before they came, or were they just hunting? Should we follow them to investigate, or continue to follow them? Anduin was a little entangled in the face of these clues. If he chased them directly, there would be too little information, and it would be easy to fall into a passive position. If they were not just this wave, but had more companions, it would still be a little dangerous. It would be embarrassing if they were bitten and became lycanthropy. It would be better to investigate along the route that this large group of werewolves came from first, and maybe we could collect some useful information, such as whether they could cast spells, whether there were any resident companions, etc. This would be the safest way. With an idea in mind, Anduin buried another positioning amulet at this intersection to facilitate the identification of the direction later, and it could also be used as a location for his apparition when he returned. Then he turned around and followed the route that the werewolves came from. And in order to improve efficiency, Anduin slightly activated the all-terrain and acceleration functions of the face shoes, and shuttled through the woods flexibly, occasionally jumping onto treetops and rocks, and quickly scanning the situation along the way with his naked eyes. After traveling about 2 or 3 kilometers quickly, he found that the blood energy became more and more dense, and it seemed that he was approaching the battle or hunting scene of these werewolves. As he got closer, Anduin slowed down instead. After all, he didn't know whether there were any enemies. At the same time, he released a few ravens to explore the way a few hundred meters ahead. After advancing nearly 1 kilometer, Anduin finally found the source of the blood energy through the shared vision of the ravens. Looking down from a high place, there was a large bush growing among various trees. In a clearing in the middle, a fragmented figure was lying, and blood splattered, dyeing the ground and the surrounding leaves scarlet. There were also some wood fragments scattered next to the figure, and it could be vaguely seen that it was originally a wooden box, which was smashed into pieces and formed the debris left behind. Anduin saw this situation and did not rush forward. Instead, he arranged several ravens to carefully investigate the crime scene. It turned out that his caution was not unnecessary. This time, he made another discovery. In the bushes more than 10 meters away from the corpse, there was a gap. It did not seem to be formed naturally. There were obvious traces of spells, and it looked like it was blasted out by a thunder explosion. After exploring around this gap again, he found that there seemed to be something hidden under a bush not far away. With the new discovery, he quickly controlled Raven to fly down and get into the bushes. House elf. Anduin looked at the image transmitted by the shared vision with some surprise. A house elf in rags was lying under the bushes, covered in dust, but it seemed to have just fainted, not dead. Seeing that there was a living person at the scene, Anduin hurried over, thinking that it might be able to answer some of his doubts. After approaching, Anduin turned over the unconscious house elf and sniffed its breath with his fingers. It was still alive, but there were many bruises and scratches on its body. It didn't bleed much, but for an elf, this injury was already very serious. If it was not treated quickly, it would probably die soon. He quickly took out the tonic potion on his body and slowly fed it to the elf, while casting a healing spell to heal its injuries. After a while, the house elf's breathing finally became smooth and strong, and the eyeballs that kept moving under its eyelids also meant that it was about to wake up. "Wake up, elf, wake up, can you hear me?" Anduin called softly after feeding it some clean water. "Master, master, no, master, help me." The elf was just mumbling weakly at first, and as consciousness gradually recovered, his expression slowly became terrified, and finally he suddenly widened his eyes and shouted for help. "Help! Master, Kiki is scared, don't kill me, don't hurt the master, help!" After the elf woke up and saw the stranger in front of him, he shouted even louder and incoherently, and his whole body was shaking with nervousness. The look in his eyes when he looked at Anduin was full of fear. "Don't be afraid, your name is Kiki, right? I'm not a bad person, don't shout." Anduin looked at the elf's appearance and comforted it in a deep voice. But after a long time, the elf still kept talking. Not only did it ignore Anduin's comfort, but it even shed tears after he spoke. "Shut up." Anduin saw that comforting it was useless and was annoyed by it. He shouted loudly, and at the same time couldn't help releasing the fear spell, and a heart-pounding magic wave emanated from him. Just like the force, it was suddenly tightened, the elf's voice was stopped with a click, and even because the brain was scared to a blank, even the tears stopped. This was the first time that Anduin had cast this spell on a humanoid creature since he had learned it. He didn't know if it was because the house elf was too timid, but the effect was too good. He was even a little afraid that it would be frightened to death. "Now, I ask you questions, understand?" Anduin looked at the elf with a stern face. Yes, please say it, please don't kill me, please." The elf trembled in his voice, clasped his hands together, and begged nervously. "What's your name?" Anduin asked in a softer tone. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 213, Black Market Merchant. "Kiki, my name is Kiki, sir." The elf Kiki answered obediently. "Why are you here? And what happened here?" Seeing that the other party finally stopped yelling, Anduin quickly got to the point. Kiki came here with the master to do business. Kiki accompanied the master in the forest for a day and a night, and then, Kiki said, and then she showed a horrified expression again, and her voice trembled again. "Don't be nervous, Kiki, I won't hurt you at will. Tell me what you and your master encountered in the Forbidden Forest." Anduin didn't dare to cast the fear spell again, squatted down and looked at the other party at eye level. Kiki and the master finally arrived at the trading location. Many terrible monsters surrounded us. They were fears to the master, and then the master asked Kiki to run. Kiki obeyed and ran. Then Kiki flew up. Kiki felt very painful. After that, Kiki didn't know where the master was. "Where is the master?" Kiki seemed to be in a mess. She couldn't sort out her thoughts clearly. She spoke incoherently, but just through the information she said, Anduin sorted out a lot of information. "Don't be nervous. I'll ask you one by one. You speak slowly." Anduin took out a bottle of tranquilizer, fed it to Kiki, and said slowly, "Did you come here to make an appointment with someone?" Anduin asked after seeing that Kiki's face had eased a lot. Kiki doesn't know. Kiki only knows to follow the master. After the master arrived here, he didn't leave. It seemed that he was waiting for someone. After drinking the tranquilizer, Kiki spoke more fluently. The ones who came to see our master were a group of werewolves. They are people who look like wolves but walk on two legs. Yes, that kind of monster, that werewolf. However, what Kiki saw at the beginning was not a werewolf, but a human wizard. Kiki was looking at the cargo box and he was talking to the master. Then the wizard got angry and shouted loudly, just like a wolf howling. Then many monsters, werewolves, appeared around. "And did your master let you run away?" "Not at the beginning. The wizard first came over and snatched the cargo box and rummaged through it. Kiki had just sorted it out. Then the wizard got even angrier. He yelled at the master. Then the master told Kiki to run, and Kiki ran. Besides the wizard, were there other humans? How many werewolves, or that kind of monsters? There was only one wizard, and there were many werewolves. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Kiki counted them one by one with her fingers until she reached 6. 6? Anduin frowned, a little confused. He could only count 5 footprints he saw before, and where did the werewolf run away? "Do you remember what the wizard said to your master?" Anduin suppressed his doubts in his heart and continued to ask. Kiki only remembers that the wizard was very fierce. He asked the master why there was no living hell soup, only sleeping potion, and the number of volatiles was not enough. How could he knock down the unicorn with just these? But they didn't know that the master had tried very hard, and the herbs needed for the living hell soup were simply not collected. Kiki gradually became aggrieved as she spoke. "Take down the unicorn. Their target is the unicorn." Kiki doesn't know. After the wizard looked at the cargo box, he kept yelling at the master. Then the wizard seemed to hear something and started to take out his wand. Kiki only remembers that the master shouted at Kiki to run. Hearing this, Anduin roughly understood the situation at the time. Kiki's master should be a black market merchant selling potions, and he made an appointment with the werewolf wizard to trade here. The goods provided by the black market merchant could not meet the needs of the werewolf wizard. Then the werewolf wizard heard something, which might be the signal from the lone werewolf. This place is only a few kilometers away from the meeting place. If it is the unique howl between werewolves, it is possible to receive it. Then the werewolf wizard prepared to rob the thieves. After that, the werewolf wizard probably released a thunderbolt explosion, which seriously injured Kiki who was fleeing. The black market merchant was also killed. The werewolves did not make up the blow. It might be that time was tight and they thought that a house elf would not survive under the explosion curse. But what puzzled Anduin was that the black market merchant was so compassionate that he remembered to let his house elf run first at this time. Then he looked at Kiki again. "Is your master good to you?" "The master is good to Kiki." Kiki nodded after hearing this. The master only beats Kiki once every 5 days, and there is food every day, 1 meal a day. After hearing Kiki's words, Anduin was speechless for a while. "You call this being good to you?" Then he thought of something that puzzled him, and asked with his head tilted. "Your master asked you to run, why didn't you use apparition? Don't you know this magic?" I remember that although house elves don't have abundant magic power, they are one of the few races that can cast spells stably without a wand. Kiki can apparition. Usually, Kiki lets the master's followers to apparition and travel. But at the time, the master asked Kiki to run, not to apparition. Kiki tilted her head and answered with big eyes. Anduin understood. At the time, the black market merchant probably wanted Kiki to take his followers to apparition and run away, but this Kiki was too straightforward. She actually ran. Anduin recalled the scene of the corpse he saw before. The black market merchant fell facing the direction of the explosion spell. It was estimated that the black market merchant was going to pounce on Kiki and let it take him away, but his elf misunderstood and really turned around and ran away. This kind of speechless tacit understanding made Anduin feel sad for the black market merchant who died tragically. "By the way, my lord, do you know where Kiki's master is?" Kiki misses her master. Kiki finally calmed down at this time, and could feel that Anduin had no intention of hurting her. "Your master," Anduin recalled the corpse he had not examined yet, and then looked at Kiki's big round eyes, and felt a little reluctant. "Okay, I'll take you to see him." Then he moved the body that blocked Kiki's way to let her see the tragic scene behind her. Master, Is this the master? Kiki staggered to the broken corpse, looking at the familiar body and her beloved cargo box next to it. Tears could not stop flowing from her eyes. Anduin also came to her side, and he also needed to re-examine this scene. Chapter 214. Magical Creature Smuggler. On the corpse at the scene, Anduin saw several claw marks. A large piece of flesh was bitten off the neck and abdomen, and there were also marks of being hit by the cutting curse on the back. It seemed that he was first severely injured by the magic attack, and then was tortured to death by the werewolf. Even he had never seen such a cruel killing method before. No wonder the wizarding world hated werewolves so much. After checking the body, Anduin picked up the remains of the cargo box next to it. Most of the fragments had nothing left except mud. It seemed that Kiki had cleaned it very cleanly. However, in addition to the large pieces of small shelf remains, there were also small drawers scattered on the ground. After collecting these small drawers, he found that although they had been emptied, there were still some residues. Anduin picked up some of them and sniffed them in front of his nose. He basically identified the herbs in them. There is wormwood, which is an ingredient for making the living hell decoction, but there is no narcissus root powder that goes with it. There is also lavender, florber mucus and valerian, which are herbs for making sleeping pills. It seems that Kiki did not lie to me. Then he used the tracking spell to investigate the scene. It was indeed consistent with what Kiki said. There was a human footprint and 6 werewolves. According to the movement trajectory of the breath, the human led 5 werewolves to the direction he came. But one of the werewolves ran in another direction, and judging from the depth of the footprints, the other party was running at full speed on all fours, running very fast and very fast. Was he going to gather his companions, or was he assigned other tasks? Anduin frowned and thought about the clues left at the scene. But before he could think for long, he was awakened by the bang-bang sound from the side. Kiki was standing next to a big tree with tears streaming down her face, constantly hitting the trunk with her head, shouting while hitting. Kiki is useless. Kiki is a house elf without a master. Why is Kiki so stupid and unable to protect her master? Kiki deserves death. After saying that, he actually picked up a sharp stone from the ground and hit it against his head. After a moment of nervous hesitation, he still hit it. Pin. A magic spell suddenly appeared, picking up the sharp stone in Kiki's hand, and then he saw Anduin walking towards her with an angry face. What are you doing? Your master is dead, but you don't want to avenge him and you want to commit suicide. Aren't you a coward? Anduin said angrily. But Kiki can't beat those monsters, and Kiki has no master anymore. Kiki is useless. The master said that useless people should die. Kiki sat on the ground and cried loudly. Hearing you say that, your master doesn't seem to be a good thing either. Anduin looked at the heartbroken Kiki in front of him in silence. Anduin despised those who didn't know how to be strong, so he didn't understand that house elves, such creatures, actually had no self-esteem at all. While he was distracted, Kiki stood up again and tried to hurt herself again, which made Anduin furious. Then he picked up Kiki and stopped her behavior. Kiki timidly begged for mercy for Anduin's behavior. Master Wizard, please let me die. Kiki's master is gone. Kiki is nothing without a master. Kiki's beloved cargo box is also gone. Please be kind to me, Master Wizard. Well, it seems like I am committing a crime if I don't let you die. Don't argue. You will follow me first in the future. You can't die without my permission. You will be useful later. Now accompany me to chase those werewolves. What? You are willing to let the humble Kiki follow you, Master Wizard? Are you willing to take in Kiki and be Kiki's master? After hearing Anduin's words, Kiki's expression suddenly became excited and stared at him in a daze. Whatever you think. Anduin couldn't help curling his lips at Kiki's sudden change of attitude. Yes, Master, you ordered the master. Do you want to beat Kiki? Do you need Kiki to find you a cane? Kiki looked at Anduin excitedly. No one wants to beat you. Hurry up and clean up. I'll bury your master first. I'll be busy later. Anduin couldn't understand the elf's brain circuit at all, and gave the order directly. I'm sorry, Master, it's Kiki who is useless and can't understand the master's thoughts. After saying that, Kiki kicked the stone beside her, and she jumped in pain. Hey. Anduin sighed speechlessly, squatted down and looked at the other party and said. Kiki. Kiki is here, Master, please give orders. Kiki bared her teeth and responded quickly. You are not allowed to hurt yourself anymore in the future. Do you understand? I'm sorry, Master, Kiki did something wrong. Kiki was about to break her fingers with tears in her eyes, but was immediately glared at by Anduin, and hurriedly stood there stiffly. Seeing this, Anduin could only shake his head helplessly. He really didn't know what to do with Kiki's situation, but if he just ignored her, she might die on the spot. Then he had to order Kiki to stay aside for a while, and he quickly buried the body of the black market merchant. It was not good to let a human corpse be exposed in the wilderness. Then he picked up Kiki and operated back to the fork in the road he had located before. The scene was divided into two routes before, one joined the lone werewolf and the other left alone. Anduin thought about which route to follow. The werewolf who left alone was very fast and his target was unknown, while this group of werewolves went straight to the centaurs, and the werewolf wizard who was suspected to be the leader also went in this direction. In the end, he decided to catch up with this large group of troops first to see the situation. From the information collected previously, it seems that these werewolves appeared in the Forbidden Forest for the unicorns. At least this was the initial target of the werewolf wizard, which made him think of magical creature smugglers at the first time. He learned from Moody that the various smuggling businesses in the British wizarding world are rampant and there are more of them than legitimate businesses. The werewolf that appeared outside the Forbidden Forest was most likely a vanguard to come for reconnaissance. Because of its wildness, it attacked the magical creature communities, but it may not have found any traces of unicorns, but accidentally found centaurs halfway, followed them, and notified the werewolf wizard through signals. They bought sleeping pills such as the Living Hell decoction, obviously wanting to catch them alive, but now they only have the second-tier sleeping pills. Although the hypnotic effect is not bad, it may not work for magical creatures such as unicorns that have strong magic resistance. In addition, since there is no trace of unicorns, the werewolf wizard is likely to change his target and aim at the centaurs in front. Chapter 215 Glimmering Cloak. After figuring out the key points, Anduin held Kiki under his armpit and ran towards the werewolves. At this time, the sun had completely set, and only a crescent moon brought some light to the earth, but the weak moonlight could not penetrate the dense forest. In this land where you can hardly see your hand in front of you, there is only the smell of decay mixed with dead leaves and animal feces. The whistling wind around is accompanied by the hoarse and inexplicable bird calls, giving people a sense of horror and loneliness. But in such an environment, Anduin still ran forward at a very fast speed, ignoring the trees, stones, pits, and gentle slopes in front of him, and shuttled through the forest flexibly. However, Kiki, who was sandwiched under her armpit, was not so calm. She only felt the strong wind hitting her cheeks, almost making her unable to open her eyes, and the darkness in front of her eyes, combined with the reflection of the eyes of the wild animals nearby, was frightened and trembled all over. "Master, it's too scary. It seems like there are ghosts around staring at us. Help." Kiki couldn't stand it anymore and had to shout loudly. "Don't be afraid. What you see is just the eyes of the night owl. From now on, don't talk anymore. It will only expose the target in advance. Do you understand?" Anduin warned in a deep voice. "Yes, master." Although Kiki was trembling with nervousness, she still completed the master's order very loyally and covered her mouth tightly with her small hands. Anduin, who was chasing at high speed, relied on the help of the echo spell and the tracking spell to bite the werewolves tightly. The bloody smell in the air and the clearly visible footprints on the ground proved that he was not far away from the other party. In order not to expose himself, Anduin did not use any lighting, and the running face shoes also activated the silent module. He was now like a silent ghost, gradually approaching the other party. This boring high-speed pursuit lasted for more than an hour. He had chased at least more than 10 kilometers and finally found the werewolves. Anduin seemed to have discovered something while running wildly, and he stopped immediately. Kiki, who was held under his armpit, was already shaking so much that the sudden stillness made her brain dizzy for a moment. "Master?" Kiki asked carefully in a low voice. "SHH." Anduin put his finger in front of his mouth, signaling her not to make a sound. Then Anduin put Kiki down quietly, and then stretched out his index finger and middle finger, put them together and pressed them on the front of his robe, and gently stroked it downward. As soon as this action was completed, a faint magical wave was seen blooming from his robe, and a circle of faint spiritual light expanded from the neck of the robe to the whole body. Kiki, who was close at hand, could only vaguely see that the robe had dents and strange patterns emerging at the moment when the spiritual light swept over it. "Okay, Kiki, you can talk now, but you must stay close to me and don't go more than 1 meter away from me, otherwise, with the noses and hearing of those werewolves, you will probably be discovered." "Yes, master." Kiki nodded obediently, and then looked at Anduin with some doubts. But, what did you just do? What are you talking about? Anduin pointed to the robe on his body and smiled slightly. This is a glimmer cloak. After it is activated, it can isolate the sound and smell within 1 meter of me, and it can also cast a range of disillusionment spells. With this, they can't find us. Wow, Master is really amazing. I have never seen or heard of such a magical treasure from my old master. Kiki's eyes lit up and looked at Anduin with admiration. This is nothing. Its invisibility duration is not as long as the invisibility cloak, but as long as you replenish the disillusionment spell regularly, it will be okay. Let's not talk about this. Hurry up and replenish some physical strength. After seeing the actions of those werewolves clearly, we will act according to the situation. After saying that, he took out 2 pieces of dried meat from his body and handed one to Kiki. Is this meat? Kiki doesn't deserve to eat meat. She could only eat meat once a year before. Kiki said a little nervously after taking the dried meat. Stop talking nonsense. Move quickly and decisively, even when eating. Anduin couldn't help but glare at Kiki, and then he chewed the dried meat by himself. Yes, Master is so kind to Kiki. Kiki stuffed the dried meat, which was bigger than her palm, into her mouth with tears in her eyes. Anduin took this opportunity to use the echo spell to explore the situation ahead. When he was moving before, he noticed that there were dense sounds coming from the front, and the stench of those werewolves could be smelled even without the tracking spell. After replenishing some food and water in a few mouthfuls, Anduin picked up Kiki, jumped high, stepped on the trunk of a big tree, and then went straight up along the trunk like a ninja. After reaching a certain height, he kicked again and jumped from one tree to another, and then repeated the trick several times, approaching the direction of the sound from high in the sky again. After several leaps, Anduin and Kiki landed on the trunk of a big tree. Although it was more than 20 meters above the ground, they could still clearly hear the noise coming from not far ahead. About 100 meters away from the trunk where Anduin was, there were the roars of werewolves and the buzzing sound of centaurs pulling bowstrings. The specific situation ahead was not clear through the dense branches and the dark night. It seems that the 2 sides have already exchanged fire. Anduin put Kiki down. Can you see the wizard who killed your master? No, Master, it's too dark, and there are trees blocking the way. Kiki shook her head in frustration. I'm sorry, Master, Kiki is useless. You are not allowed to say such depressing words in the future. Anduin said with a stern face, and picked her up again. Let's get closer, be careful not to bump into anything and make noises. Then he jumped again, moved between the big trees, and moved forward a few dozen meters, landing on a tree with a wide view. The battle took place in an open space ahead. The first thing that caught the eye was the centaurs holding torches. After all, their stature was very conspicuous. The average height of these centaurs was 3 meters. There were about 7 or 8 of them, but 3 of them were shorter and did not have beards like the others. They should be young centaurs who were underage. At this time, they were in a low-lying open space with a radius of several dozen meters. Behind them and to their left were 3 or 4 meters high rocky highlands, and to the right were several fallen trees that blocked the centaur's path. It seemed that the trunks were cut off by the spell, deliberately creating obstacles. Anduin and Kiki were also on a tree on this side. Perhaps because the trees in front were cut off, he could get such a good view. Chapter 216 The Elder's Prophecy. Opposite the centaurs was a group of werewolves in their wolf form. A human wizard-like guy was gathered in the center. He had tangled grey hair and a beard, a face full of flesh, and thick black hair on his bare chest. His face showed fangs that were not in line with those of ordinary humans. Facing these werewolves, the centaurs leaned against the huge rock behind them and lined up in 2 rows. 5 adult centaurs stood in front. The 3 centaurs in the middle held spears, and the 2 on the sides and the 3 young centaurs in the back row held bows and arrows. They were tensely alert. However, these werewolves did not rush up to fight rashly. They were obviously aware of the power of the centaurs' bows and arrows. Many of them had broken arrows stuck in their bodies, and there were also scattered traces of dirty blood on the ground. But the centaurs were not in a good condition either. Several centaurs in the front row had scratches on their bodies, and they were all panting. One of the centaurs was so seriously injured that his hands were shaking as he pulled the bowstring. These werewolves were very clever. I don't know what method they used to block all the centaurs in the corner. You know, once the centaurs start running, even the werewolves sprinting at full speed can't catch up. When the centaurs fly them, the unlucky ones are the ones who were unlucky. Judging from the situation, the two sides have obviously had one or more confrontations before, but these centaurs don't seem to have found a way to break through the encirclement, and the werewolves can't do anything about them for a while. Both sides have been seriously injured in the battle, and now they are in a stalemate. But this stalemate is actually very disadvantageous to the centaurs, because the werewolves have a strong self-healing ability. Seeing that a werewolf who pulled out an arrow from his shoulder has gradually stopped bleeding, it is likely that it will heal soon, so the initiative on the battlefield is still in the hands of the werewolves. Anduin, who was observing carefully at the site, made a new discovery. The number of these werewolves did not match his memory. Counting the lone werewolf he had been tracking before, plus the 5 werewolves and a werewolf wizard who joined up to catch up, there should be 7 people. But after his reconnaissance with the echo spell, he found that there were 11 werewolves participating in the siege, and 2 of them even quietly went around to the high ground behind the centaurs, looking like they were waiting for an opportunity to strike. The werewolves who left the scene before were indeed gathering their companions. Anduin looked at Kiki and nodded. "Is that wizard the one you met before?" "Yes, master, it's him, but there weren't as many werewolves around him as there are now," Kiki said after taking a look. Anduin nodded. It seemed that there were no other werewolves. This werewolf wizard should be the leader of this group of werewolves. After discovering the target, he sent a werewolf to gather other companions. It seems that there were quite a few werewolves distributed in the Forbidden Forest looking for the traces of unicorns. If one of them hadn't happened to run to the outskirts of the Forbidden Forest, Anduin wouldn't even know. Anduin was not going to keep these werewolves, but he was going to see the situation first. At this time, it was most taboo to rush forward recklessly. Without knowing the combat power and physical fitness of the werewolves, it was easy to suffer losses due to asymmetric information. Despicable poacher. Among the centaurs who were confronting each other, the centaur with a beard in the middle, who looked like an elder, shouted at the werewolf wizard in front of him. "We should have understood the omen of the celestial phenomena long ago." After Betelgeuse in Orion became dim, the werewolves inexplicably expanded their range of activities. "I guess it was you who was causing trouble, gathering the werewolves of disorder." Ha ha ha. The werewolf wizard licked his sharp teeth. "Smelly old horse, I advise you to surrender. I only want the brightly colored foals behind you. As for you, I will not hesitate to eat this old and dry meat. You." The centaurs in front of him were furious after hearing what the werewolf wizard said, and the 3 young centaurs behind him shot a few more arrows in anger. But the werewolf wizard did not even draw out his wand, and used his hands with sharp nails to push away the arrows. "You are so bold that you dare to reach out to us." The centaur elder held the spear tightly in his hand and pointed it at the other party. "I advise you to leave as soon as possible, otherwise the disaster that belongs to you werewolves will come." "Humph, old charlatan, your bluffing has no effect. I didn't do anything cruel to you. I just didn't want to damage the fur of those foals. You should know that damaged goods can't be sold for much money. I don't have much patience. Don't waste my kindness." The werewolf wizard snorted coldly. "A cruel and despicable werewolf has learned to be kind. It's a joke. What else can you do besides killing and polluting?" Next to the elder, another centaur holding a spear mocked. After hearing his words, the werewolf wizard was obviously enraged and stared at the other party with his teeth bared. How dare a turtle trapped in the jar look down on the proud wolf pack? Sooner or later, I will breed more werewolves and create an invincible army that can make the magic world tremble. That will be the end of your centaurs. At the time, you will become prey, and we are hunters. Aren't you very good at prophecy? Hurry up and predict your doom." The centaurs were so angry that they trembled all over when they heard the werewolf wizard say such a vicious and cruel curse. Some of them even lost their formation and were ready to rush forward to kill this damn werewolf at any time. But the centaur elder still calmly stopped his companions, raised his head and stared at the sky for a while, and then looked at the werewolf leader with a calm expression. "Run away, despicable werewolf, what is about to greet you is the wrath of thunder. I have found the revelation that the messenger from the 7th star of the Big Dipper will dominate your death. After tonight, only 2 evil dogs can see tomorrow's sun." The centaur elder said in a calm tone. "Ha ha ha, enough of the jokes. You've exhausted my patience. Since you like stars so much, I'll send you to see your stars." After saying that, the werewolf leader took out his magic wand with his right hand, grabbed a handful of low-quality test tubes filled with liquid with his left hand, squeezed the test tubes hard, and waved his magic wand. The potion that flowed out of the test tubes immediately turned into a large ball of water vapor, which was controlled by the werewolf wizard to float towards the centaurs in front. "Oh no, it's a sleeping potion. Suddenly seeing this scene, the centaurs also panicked. Chapter 217 Eye of the Storm Master, those sleeping pills in his hand are the ones he stole from us, Kiki said excitedly after seeing the test tube taken out by the werewolf wizard. Anduin nodded casually and fell into deep thought. His mind was not on the werewolf wizard now. What he cared more about was the prophecy made by the centaur elder before. The messenger of the seventh star of the Big Dipper, the Wrath of Thunder, does this refer to him? You know, his current location is indeed in the north of these centaurs. So did the centaur really foresee that he would intervene? Is there really prophetic magic in this world? In his previous habitual thinking, he thought that prophetic magic was too far away from him. This mysterious thing was like the air in the potato chip package. You can't say it doesn't exist, but you can't see it after opening the package. Now someone actually made a prophecy about him in front of him, which made him have a strange interest in prophecy. When he chose elective courses before, he didn't consider divination class, mainly because many companions in the spell club told him that the divination class in Hogwarts was very bad. That Trelawney was unreliable. She always predicted death to students every year, but none of them came true. If I just watch quietly and don't take any action, will the prediction made by this centaur fail? Anduin thought with some evil taste. Master, look, those centaurs are rushing up. Kiki beside him had been paying close attention to the scene. Seeing the situation change, she shouted hurriedly. Anduin, whose wild thoughts were interrupted by Kiki, also looked at the battle group in front of him. The centaurs were enveloped by the sleeping potion created by the werewolf wizard. As a race proficient in herbs, they quickly recognized the effects of these potions. They knew that they couldn't sit and wait for death, otherwise they would definitely be knocked unconscious, so they organized a charge again, ready to fight hard to break through. After seeing the centaur's actions, the werewolf wizard raised his head and let out a sharp wolf howl, and the native werewolves around him rushed forward with red eyes, disgusting yellow saliva flowing from their mouths, and their faces full of madness. For a moment, the two sides were in a melee, and the centaur elder in the middle held his spear straight and rushed towards the werewolf wizard, seemingly preparing to decapitate him. But the werewolf wizard saw this and sneered, raised his wand and aimed at the centaur and cast a fast and fierce curse. But the centaur elder's reaction was not bad. He swung his spear horizontally and swung it with a whoosh, and actually slapped the curse away like a fly. I don't know what his spear is made of, and the quality is so good. However, although he parried it beautifully, it also slowed down his running steps. After that, the battle between the two became that the werewolf wizard cast a curse on this side, and the centaur elder waved his spear to pick up the curse on the other side. He could occasionally stack back with his spear, but the werewolf wizard was also in good physical condition and could dodge the attack very flexibly. The two fought in a stalemate, and it was hard to tell who would win. However, the rest of the horsemen were in trouble. They had to face werewolves that were almost twice as many as their own, and there were 3 young horsemen among them. This also caused their charge to be blocked almost at the beginning, and they could only engage in close combat with the werewolves. Fortunately, in addition to the weapons in their hands, the thick horse hooves were also very powerful. With bows and spears, they severely injured 2 werewolves in one encounter. However, compared with the horsemen's big moves, the werewolves paid more attention to flexible small-scale body movements. They could not beat the horsemen in long-distance running, but they were more agile than the horsemen in close combat. So it seemed that the horsemen were chasing the werewolves, and they would be seriously injured if they were hit, but as long as the werewolves dodged, they would scratch you with their claws in return, which was very annoying. Moreover, the endurance of both sides was not at the same level. After a werewolf was shot by an arrow, it angrily bit off the arrow shaft with its teeth, howled loudly, and rushed up again. The werewolf who was seriously injured and hid aside was able to move again after a rest. It is estimated that it will not take long for him to return to the battlefield. But every time a scar appeared on the centaurs, they became weaker. Some centaurs were even stained with their own blood. The sleeping potion cast by the werewolf wizard was also taking effect. Some centaurs were already feeling dizzy. If they continued to fight like this, it would not take long for these centaurs to fall into decline. At the same time, the 2 werewolves ambushed on the high ground in the back also made contributions. They suddenly launched a high-altitude attack on the 3 young centaurs and bit off the bows of the 2 centaurs in one go, leaving them without weapons. The werewolves obviously did not want to kill these young centaurs, and they did not even want to leave too many scars. To the werewolf wizard, they were prey that was about to be captured and goods for trading. So the werewolves who perceived them aimed at the bows and arrows on the young centaurs. After destroying them, they circled around to consume the strength of these centaurs. The physical strength and magic resistance of the young centaurs were obviously not as good as those of the middle-aged centaurs, and their resistance to sleeping pills was also weaker. After being consumed for a while, one of the centaurs felt dizzy and his eyelids kept fighting, as if he was about to fall asleep at any time. Seeing that the situation had become very critical, many centaurs became anxious, and their offensive became more fierce. They even used the longbows in their hands as melee weapons and swung them wildly at the enemy, forcing the werewolves to retreat for a while. However, such a desperate counterattack made their gaps larger and more injured. The intense exercise also accelerated the blood flow, and the sleeping pills took effect faster. Ha! Your prophecy seems to have given up on you. Let your broken stars go to hell, and die, old man. The werewolf wizard saw that the situation on the scene was slowly leaning towards them, and he sneered at the centaurs triumphantly. The centaurs were also very anxious at this time. Seeing that a young centaur could not withstand the effect of the sleeping pills, he felt down. Could it be that something really went wrong with his revelation, and that the morning star no longer favored the centaurs? Anduin, who was watching the show from the side, knew that it would be too late if he didn't take action. Although he wanted to try to challenge the centaur elder's prophecy, he would be even more unhappy if he let this group of cruel werewolves win so proudly. Clicky, stay here and don't move. If you encounter any danger, approach away quickly. Anduin tilted his head and instructed the elf. Then he drew out his wand and jumped. Eye of the Storm. Chapter 218 Static Pulse. After a period of observation, Anduin had a basic judgment on the physical fitness and resistance of these werewolves. Their magic and physical resistance were much stronger than human wizards. At the same time, they had the advantages of fast movement, agility, and fast close attack speed. They also carried the wolf virus, so they must not be bitten by werewolves. To fight werewolves, the first thing to ensure is that werewolves cannot get close. Facing a large number of werewolves, if you want to do this, you still have to use range magic. Taking the above considerations into consideration, Anduin gave priority to casting the Wild Thunder spell Eye of the Storm that he developed during this period after he rushed out. The Eye of the Storm is a new spell that he optimized based on the meteorological spell. The line of sight is focused 5 to 20 meters in the air, guiding the generation of a thunderstorm cloud. A wild thunder discharge will condense in the center of the cloud. Targets within a radius of 10 to 30 meters with the cloud as the center will be listed as targets. As long as you enter the attack range, the Eye of the Storm will release a high-speed lightning, with an attack frequency of less than once a second. The number of attacks depends on the amount of magic power injected, which is between 20 to 50 times. This spell is powerful and has a wide attack range, but it also has its disadvantages, that is, it cannot distinguish between friend and foe except for the wizard who casts the spell. But Anduin has his way to deal with this. What the werewolves and centaurs who were fighting fiercely saw was a wizard holding a magic wand jumping down from the sky beside him. A cloud of flashing electric sparks floated more than 10 meters above his head and rushed straight towards the battlefield. Ah! The closest werewolf roared after seeing Anduin, staring at Anduin with scarlet bloodthirsty eyes, and then charged at him with all four legs. Crack! Bang! The thundercloud above Anduin struck the werewolf who had just rushed into the range of the Eye of the Storm. In an instant, the werewolf's hair was charred black and flew backwards. The air could even smell the smell of burnt meat. But the werewolf's vitality was indeed strong. After being struck by lightning, it rolled on the ground, struggled to jump up, and was ready to rush up to fight for its life. God of Swords. Anduin did not give the opponent any chance. He cast a God of Swords spell quickly and sharply, slashing straight at the werewolf's neck. Swish! The invisible blade accurately cut into the werewolf's neck, and in an instant it was cut in half, slicing the werewolf's head off fiercely. In one encounter, a werewolf was killed instantly. Seeing this scene, everyone in the center of the battlefield, whether enemy or friend, seemed to be frozen for a moment, and was stunned for a moment. Hold on. The sign of the morning star has appeared, get closer to me, charge. The centaur elder was extremely excited when he saw the thunderclouds appearing in the sky, and cheered loudly. To hell with it, no one can resist the fangs and claws of a werewolf, stop that wizard. The werewolf wizard tilted his head and growled at the other werewolves, and then cast a Nevada Cadaver at the centaur elder. But Anduin's intervention boosted the morale of the centaurs. The centaur's elders stabbed hard and smashed the green light, and led the centaurs to charge again. But the previous battle had greatly consumed the centaur's physical strength. At this time, 3 centaurs could not bear the effect of the sleeping pills and fell down. This charge not only left them with a few more scars, but also failed to break through. After receiving the order, the werewolves immediately assigned 2 werewolves to turn around and run towards Anduin. But at this time, Anduin was already close to the core of the battlefield. Facing the 2 werewolves rushing towards him, he ignored them and jumped, then directly inserted into the center of the battlefield. Static pulse. Anduin rushed into the battlefield and pointed his wand at the centaurs gathered together. Then he saw a ball of light flashing pink and blue in the center of the centaurs. The transparent magic shell of the ball of light kept flashing with electric light, and inside the ball of light, with the center as the origin, there were thin filaments of electric current constantly connected to the shell. The centaurs around were stunned for a moment, and before they could even react, the transparent electric ball suddenly exploded with a bang, emitting a violent electric shock and strong light, covering all the centaurs present. Anduin's operation stunned everyone present. No, this guy came to support these centaurs. Why was he casting a spell on them? Judging from the light and shadow effects of this spell, it must be very powerful. Even the werewolf wizard next to him was stunned for a moment. How much hatred does this wizard have for the centaurs? He rushed in with a bunch of werewolves and gave the centaurs a big blow. At the moment the electric ball exploded, even the centaur elder began to doubt his life. Was there something wrong with the revelation he received? Why did the 7th messenger of the Big Dipper use a big move on them right away? Wasn't he supposed to save them? But after the explosion, the centaurs found that they were not hurt at all, except that their hair stood up, and occasionally they could see faint electric light passing through their fur. Don't stand there, you won't be hurt by lightning now, come closer to me and take care of your wounded. Anduin looked at the centaurs standing there and reminded them. This static pulse spell was developed by Anduin to solve the problem of spells like Eye of the Storm that do not distinguish between enemies and friends. As long as the static force field he enchanted is covered, the range-type thunder spells he cast afterwards can avoid targets with force fields. After hearing what the centaur elder said, he immediately reacted and led the rest of the centaurs to rush towards Anduin. Sure enough, after entering the range of the Eye of the Storm, they were not attacked. This change made the werewolf wizard very angry. At first, he thought that this wizard who suddenly appeared had a grudge against the centaurs, but it turned out that he was here to oppose him. Charge forward, bite them all to death regardless of whether they live or die. The werewolf wizard didn't want to think about how to save anyone alive at this time, and gave a long howl. All the werewolves around him howled in response, and rushed towards the crowd with bloodshot eyes. Anduin smiled coldly when he saw the werewolves rushing towards him. These guys are not stupid. The attack frequency of the Eye of the Storm is not too fast, so it is impossible to attack multiple targets at the same time. Attacking together is a very effective strategy, but do you think I am a decoration, just standing here stupidly? Thunderstorm Orb. Electric Shock Circuit. Anduin held his left hand in a virtual grip, and held it with his right wand in front of his chest, with the wand pointing to the palm of his left hand. Then he saw a burst of electric sparks between the tip of the wand and his left hand, and then they gathered to form 5 miniature electric balls the size of ping-pong balls. Chapter 219 Electric Shock Circuit. Then Anduin flicked his wand forward, and 5 thunderstorm spheres formed a circle and spread out in a ring, surrounding Anduin and the centaurs. Although these werewolves were crazy and bloodthirsty, they were not fools. When they saw this kind of magic electric sphere, they knew that they must not touch it. When they saw the spheres flying, they dodged them flexibly. These spheres did not seem to chase them. They moved to a predetermined position like a wooden stake and nailed them motionless. The werewolves who staggered with the spheres thought they had avoided the threat and continued to speed up and rush towards Anduin and the centaurs. However, when they passed between the 2 spheres, an electric current loop was instantly formed between the spheres. The werewolves moving at high speed were like hitting a metal tripwire, or crossing a high-temperature beam. They were either bounced away by the current or caught in the middle and electrocuted. The werewolves caught in the middle of the linked current loop suffered the most. They were paralyzed by the current and could not move. One was even hit while jumping in the air and was directly fixed in mid-air. The Eye of the Storm in the sky also joined in the fun, occasionally striking with lightning. In just a few seconds, the unlucky werewolf was struck 3 times in a row, and his whole body was completely carbonized by the electricity. The last lightning directly smashed his upper body to pieces. You idiots, don't you know how to avoid the connection between those magic balls? Jump over. The werewolf wizard saw that one of his companions was actually struck to death by lightning, and he shouted angrily from the remaining werewolves. Seeing this situation, the remaining werewolves also knew that it was not good, and hurriedly jumped up to try to cross the current loop. But the reality was not as easy as imagined. The 5 thunderstorm magic balls were arranged in a 5-pointed star. They not only formed an electric shock circuit between the outermost magic balls, but also connected inside the ring formed by the magic balls, forming a set of 5-pointed current circuits. In fact, the use of this combination of spells is very flexible. At least 2 magic balls are needed. However, in that case, only 1 loop current will be formed. With each additional magic ball, the number of interconnected loops will increase exponentially. Moreover, the magic balls can not only be combined on the plane, but it can even block the sky after staggering the height. Anduin only sent out 5 magic balls to save magic power. If he made a lightning ray composed of more than 10 magic balls, the enemy would not be greeted by the loop line, but the loop network. Sure enough, many werewolves forgot everything after crossing the current in front, and rushed straight towards Anduin, but before they ran a few steps, they were hit by an oblique electric shock loop. One of the werewolves was even bounced away and hit another loop, and then was knocked away again. After that, it bounced back and forth between several loops like a ball, which was very funny. At the same time, after releasing the combination spells of Thunderstorm Orb and Electric Shock Circuit, Anduin was not idle either. With his magic power surging all over his body, he finished off the werewolves controlled by the Electric Shock Circuit one by one. The direct killing power of the Electric Shock Circuit was not strong, and the werewolves were thick-skinned and could only be paralyzed for a while at most. He used it more to compress their range of action and control, making it easier to aim. Cluster Lightning. God of Sharpness. 2 fast and urgent spells were fired in succession. After Anduin learned the counter-spell, the use restrictions of God of Sharpness were finally lifted, and its power did not disappoint, cutting off another werewolf's head. And Cluster Lightning is a single-target killing spell he developed. It concentrates the energy of lightning to form a high-voltage shock, with both speed and power. After firing, a silver-blue electric current was seen like a ribbon, ping, and in the blink of an eye it hit a werewolf, directly piercing the opponent's chest with a hole as big as a bowl, and the edge of the wound was even burned into charcoal. 3 werewolves were killed in the blink of an eye. Including the werewolf beheaded by Anduin first, 4 werewolves had been lost. The werewolf wizard was furious and waved his wand to send a thunder explosion at the nearest thunderstorm magic ball. He knew that this thing seriously affected the mobility of the werewolves and had to be destroyed quickly. But Anduin would not let him succeed easily. With a wave of his wand, the thunderstorm magic ball was covered with an armor spell. After a burst of explosions, the armor spell was destroyed by the explosion spell, but the magic ball was still intact. After saving the magic ball, Anduin did not care about the werewolf wizard anymore, but slaughtered the werewolves in the electric shock circuit again. 2 more cluster lightning dismembered a werewolf trapped in the circuit array alive. Anduin's decisiveness and ruthlessness also made the werewolves around him, who looked crazy, feel a little scared. For a moment, they didn't even dare to move forward. They could only circle around the loop magic circle. Anduin did not blindly cast spells on the werewolves while moving quickly. Conserving physical strength is very important in group battles. The werewolf wizard fired several rounds of spells at Anduin during this period. Judging from the opponent's reaction and the power of the spell, the werewolf wizard could not defeat the young wizard in a short time. Anduin also felt a little troublesome. The werewolf wizard was dozens of meters away from him, and the opponent's strength was much stronger than Avery, who had beaten him before. In addition, with the werewolf's physique and speed, it was difficult to deal with the opponent at this distance. Human, why are you meddling in other people's business? Why are you protecting these centaurs? The werewolf wizard saw that this was a difficult idea and decided to talk to the other party first. Do you know the consequences of provoking the werewolf clan? As long as you are willing to step aside, I can take care of the matter of killing my own people and write off your guilt. Otherwise, you will face endless revenge from the werewolves. I'm not coming for these centaurs. Anduin smiled coldly. And I don't know the consequences of provoking werewolves, and I don't want to know. But since I've targeted you, you're out of luck. Despicable poachers. The centaur elders on the side were half kneeling on the ground. They had consumed a lot of energy, and due to the influence of sleeping pills, they could hardly stand up. They could only hold on to their spears, but still shouted loudly, "Stop, your conspiracy will not succeed. It's still time to escape now, otherwise only death will greet you." It was Anduin who reacted first after hearing the centaur elder's words. He turned his head and glared at the centaur elder fiercely. "If you can't talk, just say less." I've been chasing them all day, and was just thinking about how to catch them in one fell swoop. What are you talking about? If they all run away, I will not let you go first. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 220. See the crazy blood potion again. The main reason why he was willing to help these centaurs was that he knew that these werewolves were targeting them, so he protected them as bait. If these werewolves were to flee now, it would be difficult for him to chase them. Secondly, Anduin had learned from Hogwarts that he had a good relationship with some centaurs, so he was just helping them out. As a result, this old centaur was just trying to persuade me to retreat. Werewolf brothers, please don't run away. I have killed so many of your good brothers. It would be inappropriate not to stay and take revenge. Anduin looked at the opposite side and prayed silently in his heart. Old man, dare to provoke the werewolf clan, I will use your blood and flesh to sacrifice to my dead companions. The words of the centaur obviously had the opposite effect. The werewolf wizard, who had been a little discouraged, suddenly became furious and wanted to rush up and bite these centaurs to death. Wonderful, Anduin glanced at the centaur with a little surprise. Was this old guy using provocation? It seems that I am too young and did not understand the purpose of this old centaur. The furious werewolf leader gritted his teeth, took out several more bottles of potion from his body, and then called all the werewolves to his side with a wolf howl, and then distributed the potion to the werewolves around him. After these werewolves took the potion bottles, they threw them directly into their mouths, even biting the bottles and swallowing them hard. Seeing the werewolf leader's action, Anduin thought it was not good, and quickly cast several spells to try to stop him, but the distance was too far, and the werewolf wizard blocked all attacks with 2 consecutive spells. The expressions of the werewolves who swallowed the potion changed instantly, raised their heads and let out long wolf howls, waved their claws and scratched their bodies continuously. Even if the blood flowed from the fur on their bodies, they did not stop, as if something was running around in their bodies, looking extremely painful. When they lowered their heads to face Anduin again, their expressions had changed completely. The crazy look on their faces became more and more intense, their pupils were dilated to the extreme, their muscles were bulging, and they could even see the twitching blue veins through the hair. What is this? Crazy element or blood madness potion? Damn it, Kiki never mentioned that his master also sells this kind of banned drug. Anduin's face turned a little ugly. He had seen the power of blood madness potion. Forcibly raising their physical fitness and magic resistance would surely increase their speed. These werewolves were originally fast and agile. If they were not controlled in advance, it would be difficult to hit the spells they fired. In the previous battle, the shadowless spell he cast was dodged by a werewolf outside the circuit array. I just don't know if the werewolves who used the potion can resist the impact of the electric shock circuit. Turn. Anduin saw the magic wand waved horizontally, and the thunderstorm magic ball surrounding the surroundings slowly moved, began to rotate in a clockwise direction, and slowly accelerated as time passed. This can increase the hit rate of some circuit arrays, so as not to be jumped over by these guys who took drugs. And those werewolves with increasingly crazy expressions had no reason in their eyes. After a long howl, they rushed up straight, ignoring the electric shock circuit that had been blocking them before. This time, the werewolves hit the current wire on the loop again. They endured the huge pain of being electrocuted and the strong impact of the current. Although the electric shock slowed them down, they still managed to come forward. The lightning from the eye of the storm in the sky would have knocked the werewolves away and seriously injured them if they hit them. Now, after being hit, it only made them pause slightly. Although it would also leave a hideous and terrifying electric mark on their bodies, they seemed to have forgotten the feeling of pain and rushed forward with the impact. God of Sharpness. Just as the werewolves came over, Anduin left and cast 2 God of Sharpness spells. One of them was actually dodged by the werewolf with enhanced reaction. Although the other one hit the enemy, it could not penetrate. The werewolf directly tensed his muscles and even locked the wound for a while, stopping the blood from spurting. It seems that the idea of relying on spells alone to solve them is still too naive. Anduin shook his head and gave up his original plan. Now he has to fight the enemy seriously. He raised his left hand and swiped it across his body. 2 metal amulets instantly appeared in his hand, and then he threw them forward with all his strength. He then took out a metal ball, which flew up with a buzzing sound after it was activated, and kept spinning around Anduin. It looked like a silver version of the golden snitch, but without wings. Then he slapped his waist, pulled out a long silver metal chain and threw it forward. The long chain instantly deformed in the air and turned into a silver metal snake, and twisted its body back and forth in coordination with the flight, like a real venomous snake rushing forward. It was the spirit-binding snake he had used before. Finally, Anduin opened his left hand, and the metal magic book suddenly appeared in his hand. The two amulets exploded at the same time after approaching the werewolves that were rushing straight at him. First, a silent sound wave hummed and shocked the werewolves dizzy, causing them to slow down instantly. Then another amulet also burst out a wave of magic power that covered the werewolves, but no changes could be seen with the naked eye. But the werewolves suddenly showed panic, and their steps became staggering. One of them even tripped over a stone. Another one stretched out his claws to scratch his eyes, as if something blocked his vision, but he did not react until he scratched his eyes until they bled. The rest of the werewolves either lost their way and rushed to other places, or yelled and screamed, waving their claws and scratching wildly in front of their eyes. Obviously, they all lost their eyesight. This was the Endless Darkness amulet that Anduin made some time ago, and the effect of the amulet was even better than Anduin imagined. Almost instantly, the werewolves fell into chaos. His soul-binding snake also hit a werewolf at this time. At this time, the soul-binding snake seemed to have real life. It twisted its body flexibly and tightly wrapped around the werewolf. After wrapping the enemy, the soul-binding snake lit up with a dazzling magic aura, and then stimulated a strong electric current, which directly electrocuted the werewolf to lose the ability to move and fell to the ground and twitched. The runes on the new version of the soul-binding serpent have been strengthened many times. In addition to the disabling spell, it also has the energy absorption spell and the thunder rune. The original disabling spell rune can make the enemy lose physical strength quickly, while the energy absorption spell can absorb some of the lost magic power. Combined with high voltage electric shocks, it can almost draw magic power while discharging electricity, and even form perpetual motion. Chapter 221 God-Destroying Slash. However, just as Anduin's amulet and spirit-binding snake took effect, the werewolf wizard also took action. He even moved forward with the werewolves for a distance and took the opportunity to destroy a thunderstorm ball. At the same time, he kept waving his wand and shooting evil spells at Anduin. Just as these spells were shot at him, the metal magic ball that Anduin had just activated and surrounded him immediately lit up with magic patterns, and then like a mosquito smelling blood, it crashed into the path of the spells. The metal ball buzzed and released layers of transparent light shields to block these fierce evil spells. One of the thunder explosions even shattered two protective light shields, but the metal ball immediately cast a new protective shield to block all the explosion damage and aftermath. These attacks did not even blow away the corners of Anduin's clothes. This metal ball is called Lincoln's Sphere by him. It is Anduin's most proud alchemical work recently. At first, he wanted to make a magic floating cannon that can automatically search for enemies and launch cluster lightning for auxiliary attacks, but he found it unrealistic and difficult to operate after actually operating it. First of all, it is very difficult to automatically search for enemies. What determines whether it is an enemy? Temperature, malicious source, or counterattack after being attacked? If someone accidentally hits it, won't it counterattack randomly? Wouldn't it become a floating cannon that shoots randomly? It is also difficult to fire spells at the same time. In fact, wizards need to rely on the magic wand to channel magic power when firing spells, so that the spell can remain sufficiently condensed after leaving the magic source. Moreover, the spell is locked with the eyes. Although it only takes a moment to fire, it contains will and intention. If there is no control from the wizard, the spell fired by the alchemical creation may not be accurate. So this is also the reason why there are almost no alchemical items in the wizarding world that can automatically launch spells. Alchemical props can release spell effects around them, can cast spells when controlled by wizards, can be deformed, and can be remotely sensed, but they cannot cast spell projectiles with trajectory when no one is controlling them. Based on this problem, Anduin can only make a second best choice and make an automatic defensive floating sphere. It is not easy to lock the enemy, but it is still possible to lock the attacking spell. In order to enhance the defensive performance and strength, he used a lot of high-quality materials for this sphere, and 1 ounce of alim steel was used. The main body has no problem resisting the killing curse. At the same time, 16 armor runes are engraved on the body. If one side is broken, there is another side. There are also energy-absorbing runes, which can absorb magic power and replenish it into the armor runes when resisting attacks. He has tested that every time 3 layers of armor protection are broken, the sphere can replenish the magic power acquired for 1 layer of armor by absorbing energy. It can also automatically continue to operate at ordinary times and absorb free magic power autonomously. With the Lincoln sphere blocking the werewolf wizard's attack, Anduin could free up his hands and feet to deal with the remaining werewolves. There were originally 11 werewolves, including the werewolf wizard. 4 of them were killed before, and 1 was disabled by the bound spirit snake. Now there are only 5 blind werewolves left. 2 of the werewolves have very strong willpower. They can no longer see, but they still rely on their sense of smell to grope towards Anduin quickly, and they keep waving their claws in front of them while walking. It is obvious that they will not give up until they achieve their goal. Anduin knows that it is difficult to break through the physical defense of these werewolves using ordinary spells. Although the God's Shadowless spell can cause unhealable wounds, it cannot kill them in a short time. Must kill with 1 blow. After thinking about it, Anduin quickly mobilized his magic power, and then the centaur elder behind him clearly felt that there was a terrifying magic fluctuation, which instantly appeared on the young wizard. It was a pale, desolate breath of magic power, a suffocating feeling, as if tons of weight were pressing on his chest, making him almost forget to breathe. On the one dark painting in Anduin's hand, circles of silver-white electric light began to appear around the wand, and then spread along the wand and his arm to his whole body. Even in Anduin's pupils, a circle of silver light began to appear, and his hair stood up because of the current, and he could even see the electric sparks flashing between his hair. The terrifying aura that erupted from Anduin was felt by the werewolf wizard who was 20 meters away, which immediately gave him an ominous premonition. He immediately fired a killing curse at Anduin, but the Lincoln sphere that was blocking the opponent was instantly deformed and turned into a metal round shield that withstood the Avada Kedavra, and his body was unscathed, still quietly blocking him and Anduin. Seeing this scene, the werewolf wizard secretly cried out in his heart that it was not good, and he could not help but take a few steps back. His sixth sense told him that he had to leave the scene quickly, otherwise it would be too late. In fact, only a few seconds passed, and Anduin had completed his own power accumulation at this time. And at the moment when Anduin just raised his wand, the werewolf wizard's heart stopped beating for a moment. Feeling extremely scared, he quickly raised his wand and activated the phantom shift, disappearing from the spot. But the few werewolves he left at the scene were not so lucky. God, destroy, kill. Pin. 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 5 loud noises like thunder in the ears echoed in the forbidden forest. The sound was violent but extremely short, and for a moment, the animals of all sizes within a few kilometers were startled. So fast. So loud. So bright. The centaur elder who had been staring at Anduin had only this thought in his mind at this time. But now he only felt that he was about to be blinded. The moment the opponent launched the spell, 5 consecutive strong lights burst out, which were also intense and short. But for the centaur elder, it was like the high beams of an Audi flashing next to his face in the middle of the night, as if the day had suddenly dawned. When the centaur elder regained his vision, he found that Anduin in front of him was soaked in sweat, breathing heavily, holding a bottle of potion and pouring it into his throat. The 5 werewolves who were still standing before had now turned into 5 black sculptures like coke. At this time, a strong wind blew, and the 5 black sculptures turned into wisps of charred sand and dust with the wind. Hiss. The centaur elder and several centaurs who were still awake behind him took a breath of cold air. What kind of powerful spell was this? Even the werewolves strengthened by banned drugs were vulnerable. If they were facing this spell, they probably wouldn't have room to react. Chapter 222 Forensi. I didn't expect that this lightning whip released by the god-destroying slash would consume so much energy, almost draining all the magic power in my body. Anduin thought with some fear. Fortunately, the werewolf wizard ran fast, otherwise he might not have the physical strength to fight back in a short time. He had just developed this spell some time ago, and he didn't even have time to test it. He just wanted to test the effectiveness of the spell, but it almost went wrong. But to be honest, the power of the god-destroying slash was beyond his imagination. After studying day and night during this period, he also discovered a special property of the Wild Thunder magic rune, which is that it has a highly compressible property. As long as the magic power is sufficient, the lightning energy can be compressed almost unlimitedly, and the voltage and power will increase accordingly. In the memory of the Thunderbird that was peeped from the magic rune at the time, the Thunderbird flying towards the storm also absorbed a large amount of electric charge into its body. I guess this function was formed at the time. After discovering this characteristic, Anduin came up with the idea of developing the God-destroying slash. He infinitely compressed the Wild Thunder rune, or in other words, injected as much magic power as possible into the extremely compressed rune, and formed a spell he called the God-destroying slash. In theory, the power of this spell is infinite, and it can naturally kill even gods. Simple. Brutal. This is Anduin's evaluation of it. He previously compressed 90% of his magic power into the Wild Thunder rune. When casting the spell, the speed of magic power outflow was too fast. He didn't even have time to react before he hit the enemy instantly. During this period, what he spent the most energy on was actually turning around and releasing a few more God-destroying slashes at the remaining werewolves. The magic power output is extremely fast, and the release speed is extremely fast. It takes almost a blink of an eye from the release of the magic wand to hitting the enemy. However, a lot of magic power was wasted during this period, just like using a cannonball to hit a mosquito. The damage was overflowed. This was mainly because the magic power output was too fast, the output was fast, and the release speed was also extremely fast, from the release of the wand to hitting the enemy in almost the blink of an eye. At the same time, the sound and light effects of the God-destroying slash were also very scary, and Anduin himself was startled. His eyes were also a little dazed, and both ears were now a little tinnitus. But to compress magic power and magic runes, you need strong magic control, and the control power is mainly affected by magic sensitivity. Most wizards can't do this step at all, and use all their energy to control the compressed magic power, so they have no energy to control the magic output. This is also the reason why he was exhausted. Anduin blasted out 90% of his magic power in 1 second. It seems that if this spell wants to be used proficiently in the future, it must be allocated to the control of compressing the Wild Thunder magic power and the output of magic power, and grasp the balance between them before it can be used routinely. After downing 2 bottles of tonic, Anduin finally recovered a little. Then he glanced at the battlefield. The 5 werewolves had been beaten to ashes. This once again confirmed the horror of this spell and proved how much magic output he had wasted. The werewolf wizard used apparition to escape the moment he made his move. Counting the 4 werewolves he had killed before, 10 of the 11 enemies had been dealt with. The remaining werewolf controlled by his spirit-binding snake had also fallen unconscious at this time, and the magic power in his body had been basically drained. He left this werewolf behind specifically, and he needed a living person to understand the situation of these werewolves. Then Anduin looked back at the centaurs. Under the care of the elder, most of the centaurs had regained consciousness, and the wounds on their bodies had stopped bleeding. It seemed that they were no longer in danger of life. Kiki! Anduin shouted to the distance, and then slowly walked towards the fallen werewolf. Whoosh! The house elf Kiki appeared through the apparition and instantly came to Anduin's side. Master, you are so powerful. You killed all these terrible monsters with just 3 punches and 2 kicks. And your last spell was too scary. When you used it, I thought it was dawn. Kiki looked at Anduin with admiration, and did not hesitate to praise him. Okay, stop talking. I ask you, why didn't you tell me that those werewolves had dangerous things like the blood madness potion? Anduin took out a pair of magic forbidden handcuffs from his body and handcuffed the werewolf, then controlled the spirit-binding snake to tie the werewolf's mouth, and asked Kiki without turning his head. The master didn't ask before, and Kiki can't recognize all the potions in the cargo box. I don't know what the blood madness potion is. I'm sorry, master, did Kiki do something wrong? Kiki rubbed her hands and looked at Anduin, thinking that she had made a mistake again. She hurriedly explained nervously, and at the same time, she was ready to kick the stone with her feet, but she remembered the master's previous order and had to stop the action, leaving only a tangled expression. You must learn to think for yourself in the future, think actively. All right, pack up, and when I get the information I want from the werewolf, we will leave here. Anduin felt very helpless when he saw Kiki's pitiful look. Now he must first find a way to get more information about the werewolf wizard from this survivor. This kind of dangerous guy, since he has made an enemy, he must cut the grass and get rid of it. Ahem, young man. The centaur elder on the side saw that Anduin only said 1 sentence to them from beginning to end and ignored them, so he could only take the initiative to say hello. I know you don't like humans, but I need this place. If you don't want to see me, leave. Anduin still lowered his head to fiddle with the werewolf, and said without turning his head. No, young wizard, we have no ill will towards you. You stood up and saved the lives and freedom of our centaur tribe. We just want to express our gratitude to you. The centaur elder stood up, put his right hand on his chest, and said respectfully. He dared not be disrespectful now. The young man in front of him just killed the werewolves who'd besieged them in front of him, and the few fellows behind him also nodded to him. Oh? Anduin turned his head to look at the centaurs, and pinched the monocle in front of him with his hand. I accept your gratitude, but I came here for these werewolves, and I saved you just for Hagrid's sake. Hagrid? You mean the Hagrid from Hogwarts? A handsome young centaur came forward. He had unusually blue eyes, gleaming white gold hair, and a silver body and ponytail. For a centaur, he was considered a handsome guy. Firenze, do you know the wizard that the benefactor mentioned? The centaur elder tilted his head and looked at Firenze and asked. Chapter 223 Gift. Yes, but Hagrid doesn't seem to be a wizard. I have seen him several times when I was hunting in the territory near Hogwarts, and gradually I became familiar with him. He is different from other wizards, and I have shared prey with him. Firenze's voice was clear and loud, but not harsh. He is my friend, the guard of the Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts. Anduin nodded. What Firenze said was basically consistent with the information he heard from Hagrid. So you have such a fate. It seems that fate has not abandoned the centaurs. The morning star is still looking after us. The centaur elder put his hands on his chest, faced the sky, and saluted the celestial phenomenon. The centaurs beside him also saluted the sky with respect, much more pious than when they faced Anduin just now. Anduin frowned when he saw this. Why are these centaurs talking so mysteriously, as if fate saved them? If he had known earlier, he would have waited until they were all dead before taking action. The movement of stars is ever-changing. In front of the vast universe, we're as insignificant as ants. I advise you not to always count on the stars. Sometimes wise eyes and minds are more reliable than celestial phenomena. Anduin interrupted in a somewhat unromantic way. You. Another young centaur beside the elder heard Anduin's disrespectful words and wanted to stop him in anger, but was immediately stopped by the elder beside him. Ronan, the words of our benefactor are full of wisdom. We must not be disrespectful to him. The elder shook his head at the young centaur beside him, then looked at Anduin. You're right, sometimes we will fall into the myths brought to us by the stars, just like this crisis, we were almost unaware of it beforehand. Then the elder took a few steps forward and asked softly, please tell us your name. I'm Brandwoodin, the chief of this centaur. In this forest that you call the Forbidden Forest, we regard the southern region, which is near Hogwarts, as our territory, but from now on you are our guest and friend. Anduin Wilson, currently studying at Hogwarts, nice to meet you. Anduin could see that the centaur elder was wise and rational, and was very polite to him. Nice to meet you, Anduin. Brandwoodin smiled, took out a horn from his body and handed it to the other party. To thank you for your help, please accept my gift. This horn is made of the horn of the Reem cow. Blow it in the southern region, and all the centaurs who hear the horn will respond to you immediately. Thank you. Anduin raised his eyebrows and accepted the horn with satisfaction. He didn't expect to receive a gift. The handsome Firenze also stepped forward at this time, took off the only intact longbow on his body, and handed it to Anduin. This is my personal weapon, made of black thornwood and my tail hair. It is my treasure, symbolizing my friendship and respect for you. Please be sure to accept it. Firenze handed over the longbow in his hand with a respectful expression. Facing Firenze's solemnity, Anduin also accepted the gift with a serious expression, and then the centaurs around him lined up and came forward one by one to present the gifts they regarded as treasures to Anduin. Including Ronan, who had been a little disrespectful before, also presented his most beloved fine steel dagger with the same expression of respect. Soon Anduin received a horn, a longbow, a dagger, a spear, 2 bags of rare herbs, a necklace woven from unicorn tail hair and animal teeth, and a bezer the size of a centaur's fist. After accepting these gifts, Anduin had a deep understanding of the centaurs. Although these centaurs were a little conservative and stubborn, they were more simple, natural and trustworthy than some intrigue-seeking and deep-minded humans. After accepting these gifts in the same solemn manner, the elder Brandwagen told Anduin that he was welcome to help him in any way he needed their help. Anduin seemed to have thought of something at this time, and asked Brandwagen, do you know anything about these werewolves, and about the werewolf wizard leader? How did he suddenly gather the werewolves together? Well, as for these werewolves, I only know that they were only active in the north before. According to the news I got from my fellow tribes in the north, they have been relatively scattered and there is no sign of gathering. Brandwood pointed to the direction where Anduin appeared before and said, and I have never seen the werewolf leader, but I do have some guesses about it. Oh? What guesses? Do you know the mysterious man? Are you talking about the Dark Lord? Anduin raised his eyebrows in surprise. Why did he bring up that guy again? Yes, before the mysterious man died, he sent messengers to contact us and tried to get the centaurs to fight for him. Of course, we refused, but we also became enemies with the mysterious man's forces. During that time, we had a lot of friction and fighting with the dark wizards. In order to avoid them, the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest also settled in different places to avoid those dark wizards. Some time ago, we were discussing tree merge. Brandon sighed. Anduin nodded. It seems that the Dark Lord's hand is very long, and he even wants to bring non-human races under his command. As far as I know, in addition to listing us as a target, they have contact with werewolves, giants, and even trolls. Of course, they failed. The troll's intelligence cannot understand their thoughts. Brandon explained. You mean, the werewolf wizard may have been sent by the mysterious man to summon the werewolves before? Anduin suddenly realized. Yes, he may have succeeded, but facing the death of the mysterious man, he has gathered a bunch of werewolves, so he can only find another way out. Brandon nodded. I understand, thank you for your explanation. Anduin thanked the elder. Death Eaters again, these guys are really haunting. Anduin thinks that Brandon's guess should be almost right, so he can't let this guy go. After the conversation, Brandon said goodbye to Anduin, and then led the centaurs away. The young centaurs led by Ferenzi still nodded respectfully to Anduin before leaving. They were clear about gratitude and resentment and would not be stingy with the goodwill they should express. After watching the centaurs leave, Anduin put the gifts he received into the newly made space ring, and then planned the next action. Chapter 224 Fenrir Greyback. Although the origins of these werewolves were roughly understood, the escaped werewolf leader still made Anduin very concerned. First of all, he had to find a way to figure out the other party's identity, find him, and deal with him. Moreover, he didn't know whether these werewolves had their own bases in the Forbidden Forest, and he didn't know whether there were any fish that slipped through the net besides these 10 werewolves. After thinking about it, Anduin raised his hand and sent out an arc of electricity to wake up the unconscious werewolf lying on the ground. Ah! The werewolf who regained consciousness let out an angry wolf howl, but as soon as he opened his mouth, the soul-binding snake tied to his mouth quickly tightened, holding back all the subsequent sounds into his throat. The werewolf who couldn't make a sound struggled to get up, but was immediately stepped on by Anduin. Now the werewolf was being drained of energy by the magic forbidden handcuffs and the soul-binding snake. He had no strength in his body. After a little rolling, he was exhausted and panting. In the end, he could only stare at Anduin viciously, with crazy lights still flashing in his eyes. Do you understand human language? Anduin asked condescendingly, while he continued to increase the strength of his feet and at the same time controlled the spirit-binding snake to loosen a little gap. Ugh! Human, die! The werewolf was still crazy. After shouting loudly, he pretended to stretch his mouth to bite Anduin, but was quickly controlled by the tightening spirit-binding snake. It seems that you can't understand human language. Anduin shook his head, then took out a large box full of various supplies from the space ring, and looked at Kiki. There are tents and food in it. We will camp here tonight. You help set it up, build a bonfire, and prepare some food. The space ring he made with Alim steel has a huge internal storage space. In addition to storing a large amount of wilderness survival equipment and daily necessities for himself, he even moved all the supplies in the basement of No. 277 diagonally into it. Now the warehouse part in the basement has been transformed into a secret underground laboratory by him. Yes, master. Kiki finally got her first job after becoming Anduin's house elf, and she quickly fiddled with it with great interest. Kiki is indeed a house elf, and she is very skilled in housework magic. Her two little hands are actually skilled in double-line operation. One hand unfolds the tent cloth, and the other hand controls the assembly of the bracket. After Anduin instructed Kiki, he turned his attention to the werewolf again. He lifted the other's head with a giant hand composed of magic, and then looked at the werewolf's scarlet eyes full of madness and launched legislative thought. Compared with normal humans, the spiritual world of werewolves is very different. Their protection of memory and spirit is actually much worse than that of humans. Human wizards have an instinctive rejection and resistance to mind-invading magic. But werewolves are just like shopping malls with open doors. You can look and touch at will, but the memories in their brains are full of disorder, primitiveness and chaos. Although it is easy to invade, it is more difficult to find useful memories than humans. Fortunately, werewolves have good memories. Perhaps this is why they hold grudges and seek revenge. They retain many long-standing memories in their minds. Although they are scattered and chaotic, they are still there. As long as you spend more time, you can still gain something. It took Anduin nearly an hour to perform legilimency on this werewolf. Clicky, who was next to him, not only set up a tent, but even cooked a pot of fragrant soup on the campfire in front of the tent. Bang! Anduin threw the werewolf down heavily and twisted his stiff neck. After spending so much time, he finally found some useful information. From the memory of this werewolf, he also learned the general process of the incident. The werewolf wizard was named Fenrir Greyback, and he had long been the leader of a werewolf community. However, in Anduin's eyes, Fenrir is a werewolf extremist and terrorist. He is committed to biting and infecting as many people as possible, and wants to create a large number of werewolves to defeat wizards. He even extends his claws to some children, infects them into werewolves, adopts them, and trains them into warriors. Moreover, Fenrir likes to intensify the contradictions between the werewolf and wizard communities, lets his fellow werewolves to attack wizards, conducts terrorist activities, and even teaches those infected with lycanthropy to hate humans and wizards. But Anduin also learned a troublesome thing. Fenrir's range of activities is not limited to the United Kingdom, and his base camp is not even in the United Kingdom. Fenrir does have a relationship with the Death Eaters. In the late stage of the war, he formed an alliance with the mysterious man, and at the suggestion of the Death Eaters, he traveled back and forth to summon his fellow werewolves scattered everywhere, including these native werewolves and lycanthropes. Not long after Fenrir reached an alliance with the Death Eaters in Britain, the mysterious man died, and the activities of the Death Eaters began to go underground. Fenrir, who was not even a Death Eater himself, was still looking for traces of his fellow werewolves in order to expand the werewolf community. Native werewolves are easy to control. Fenrir, as a fellow werewolf, with strong strength and human wisdom, gathered a lot of native werewolves. The one caught by Anduin belongs to this group. However, many werewolves are unwilling to be controlled and manipulated by him. Many of them are victims, because they were attacked and bitten by werewolves and had to be transformed into werewolves, so they are very disgusted and hate werewolves and even their own identities. So in the face of Fenrir's recruitment, most of them chose to refuse. For this reason, the cruel and dictatorial Fenrir launched a large-scale purge against them. Most of these werewolves who were accidentally transformed live alone in remote areas, isolated from the group, and are at the bottom of society. Even the Ministry of Magic doesn't know much about them. During this period, Fenrir led these native werewolves to travel around and fight against those lycanthropes who were unwilling to surrender. Many of the infected werewolves surrendered under force, and those who were unwilling to surrender were brutally killed. Then Fenrir transferred the infected werewolves who surrendered to the interior of Europe and handed them over to their companions on the European continent for management. He led these native werewolves to stay and lurk in the Forbidden Forest to smuggle magical creatures and non-human intelligent creatures to raise money and wealth. They had actually hunted many magical creatures before, including Thestrals, cat kings, moon crazed beasts, bird snakes, etc. This time their target was original unicorns, but they found centaurs by mistake. Fenrir currently imprisoned all these captured prey in a secret base in the Forbidden Forest. Chapter 225 March in Uniform. However, the base was very far from here, and there were several werewolves guarding it. Anduin roughly calculated that if he rushed over at full speed, it would take at least 2 or 3 hours, but if Fenrir reacted quickly, this time would be enough for them to evacuate, and Anduin's condition was not very good. The mental fatigue and physical exhaustion were not enough to support another battle. It seemed that he could only rest for a while before chasing after him. Anduin made a decision and then looked at the werewolf lying on the ground again. In line with the principle of not wasting, Anduin took out various materials and tools, collected a lot of blood, hair, and saliva from the werewolf, and then killed it with a sharpened invisible strike. Anyway, there were other survivors, so it was better not to leave such dangerous things. Clicky, who was on the side, watched Anduin do some strange things to the werewolf, and then killed it with a cold expression. It must be a lie to say that he was not panicking. His new master did not look like a kind man. After Anduin cleaned up the place, he came to Clicky's side. Seeing that the elf was stiff and even trembling, he looked at her in confusion. "What's wrong? Are you cold?" "No, Clicky is not cold, master, you drink the soup." Clicky was frightened by Anduin and quickly served the food, but her trembling hand spilled the soup. "I'm sorry, master, I'm sorry," Clicky was wrong. The elf rubbed the rags on her body nervously with her little hands. Due to Anduin's orders, she didn't even know how to punish herself. Don't be nervous, Clicky, I can do it myself. By the way, you don't need to say sorry to me in the future. You haven't apologized to anyone, understand? After saying that, Anduin served a bowl of thick soup, took a sip, and then looked at Clicky in surprise. The cooking skills are good. It would be better if the mushrooms were fermented for another 2 minutes, but the heat is well controlled. Anduin took another sip of the mushroom soup and nodded in praise. I'm sorry, master. I'll be more careful next time. Clicky didn't hear Anduin's praise, but thought he was blaming her. She lowered her head nervously, tears welling up in her eyes. Seeing Clicky's look, Anduin shook his head helplessly. This little elf was too sensitive, always startled. Don't just stand there and watch. Eat something too. Anduin gestured to Clicky. No, Clicky is not hungry. Clicky is not worthy of eating with the master. Clicky shook her head in panic. She didn't dare to do such an overstepping thing. Clicky. Anduin looked at the elf with a serious face. There is no such thing as worthy or unworthy. You were a free individual. No matter how you were taught since childhood, you don't need to be so restrained in front of me. Free? The former master can tell Clicky that Clicky is a slave and unworthy. If you say this again, I will be angry. I don't care how you think of yourself, but I don't like people speaking in a humble manner in front of me. So, even if you are pretending, you have to stand up straight and speak clearly and forcefully. Anduin looked at Clicky with some annoyance. It seems that this elf has to be trained well. Let her know what it means to stand and sit properly. Yes, master. Clicky straightened her back quickly after hearing this, and looked at Anduin with level eyes. This was very difficult for her. She had to overcome the humility and fear hidden in her heart. Anduin's expression was relieved a lot. It seemed that for such a guy who only knew how to follow orders, he still had to use the same method in the team. Okay, listen to my orders, eat now and sleep. Then Clicky had a full meal under Anduin's mandatory order, and slept on a worn bed with a quilt and mattress under his supervision. This was the first time in her life that she slept on a bed and covered herself with a quilt. It was just like a dream. In Clicky's eyes, Anduin's image had changed wonderfully. This new master was so cruel when he treated those werewolves, but why was he so kind to a humble elf like her? With this puzzlement, Clicky gradually fell asleep. When she woke up again, it was still dark, and her master Anduin was standing in front of her fully armed. Next to her bed was a brand new marching uniform, including shoes. This, master, what is this? Clicky got up quickly, looking at the somewhat helpless look in front of her. Hurry up and put on your clothes. I used the shrinking spell to make them so that you won't be easily spotted in the forest. We have to find the remaining werewolves before dawn. Anduin said in a crisp and powerful voice. Master, don't you want Clicky? When you give us clothes to wear, we will be free, but free house elves are despised elves. Clicky finally found a new master. Clicky burst into tears, as if it was a shame to be free. I'll say this one last time. Don't cry. You are free. If you are willing to work for me, you must listen to my orders. I will pay you according to your work. If you keep hesitating, you can stay in the Forbidden Forest and cry by yourself. Anduin had already figured out how to communicate with the house elves, so he ordered very straightforwardly. These bad habits engraved in their bones can only be changed slowly in the future. The most urgent task now is to sneak attack the werewolf stronghold before dawn. After hearing what Anduin said, Clicky stopped crying and hurriedly picked up the clothes. She didn't want to be left alone in the woods. She had such a big reaction because of her instinctive humility. After putting on the camouflage combat uniform, Clicky also showed a capable look. Although she said she was more resistant to this set of clothes, she couldn't hide her inner love when she adjusted her appearance and touched the fabric on her body from time to time. Anduin didn't care about Clicky's entangled behavior, but put away the camping equipment very quickly. When everything was ready, he picked up Clicky again, took out a flying broom, and rushed towards the direction of the known stronghold. At this time, it was only 3 or 4 in the morning, and there was still some distance before dawn. It was the time for all creatures in the Forbidden Forest to rest. Anduin was planning to create a time difference and catch all the werewolves in one fell swoop. If Fenrir returned to the base and migrated immediately, then this should be their time to rest, and they could catch up by following the footsteps of the base. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.